Okay, we're good to go.
Thank you very much. This Committee of Adjustment meeting of April the 27th, 2021 will come to order. Members of the public, staff, presenters, and members of the committee, please be advised that meetings are broadcast and recorded and made available on the internet. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest or the nature thereof? Seeing none, please have that noted in the minutes. I will go now to our planner to announce the purpose of our meeting.
Thank you. The Committee of Adjustment is holding a public hearing in accordance with Section 45 of the Planning Act as amended in order to consider applications for relief from the Township's zoning bylaw, which is zoning bylaw 2009-021. The prescribed notice of public meetings are provided by prepaid first-class mail to all residents within a 60-meter radius of the subject properties. The ministries and agencies were circulated via email, and the subject properties were posted with a sign advertising the public hearings. The notices were also available on the Township's website. The notice circulation complies with the requirements of the Planning Act. In order to be notified of a decision of the Township of Severan on the minor variance application, a written request must be made to the Township. So I'll just move right into the applications. The first is file number A-08-21. The property owner is Scott MacArthur. There is no agent, and the address of the property is 31 Lakeshore Boulevard in the Ennismore ward. The applicant is requesting several variances in order to be able to permit the redevelopment of a waterfront lot, the construction of a approximately 3,815 square foot dwelling. There would be an attached garage, as well as 406 square feet of decking, and a new septic system, which will be a Waterway biofilter, will be installed. So the applicant is looking for relief from the setback from the high water mark from 30 meters to 24 meters. That would allow for the new dwelling, and from 30 meters to 15.8 meters to the septic system. They're also looking to reduce the front yard setback from 7.5 meters to 4.9 meters. The house was pushed closer to the front lot line in order to be able to accommodate the septic system. They're looking to decrease the minimum side yard setback from 3 meters to 2 meters, as well as to increase the maximum coverage of all building structures from 20% to 25.1%. So I have completed a review of the application under the 4 tests of the Planning Act. And it is my opinion that the general intent and purpose of the Township's official plan and zoning bylaw have been maintained. The variance is desirable for the appropriate development or use of land, building, or structure, and the proposed variance is minor in nature. And I have recommended the committee grant the variances. We have received comments from the Conservation Authority since I filed this report, and they don't have any objections to the application.
All right, thank you very much. I understand the agent, John Birmingham, is on the line. Sir, do you have anything you wish to add to what Jeanette has said?
The only thing I want to reiterate is the clients have chosen the Waterloo system because they are quite concerned about the impact of a septic system on a waterfront property, and they've tried to design a good system that's environmentally friendly to the property development as well.
All right, thank you. And are the owners on the line as well, just for the record? Mr. MacArthur? Deputy Clerk?
Yes, they should be on the line.
Okay, and do they have anything they wish to add?
Just give me a moment.
No, I'm speaking for Scott and Sue, and we're good. We're happy.
Okay, thank you very much. Deputy Clerk, is there anyone on the line that is opposed to this application?
I have no one else here for this application, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. I'll bring it to committee. Are there any questions? Anita.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know Mr. Birmingham mentioned the Waterloo biofilter. Can you explain a little bit of what that is? I've never heard of one before.
Well, I'll compare it to a traditional septic system that where sewage goes into a tank and it's broken down, and then it goes into a filtering bed that goes through a system of gravel and sand into the soil. A biofilter Waterloo system basically contains it in a tank, and then it's broken down with pumps and spray nozzles And what ends up into the filter bed per se is actually 98% clean septic waste. So it's a highly efficient system, and especially on a lakefront property.
Thank you very much. Could I just have one follow-up question? Do we have any other rural properties that utilize this? It sounds like a very good technology, and I'm just curious if we have other residential properties that have this, or if it's something that's fairly new.
It's not fairly new. In fact, the contractor who installs them, Randy Barker from Park Hill Excavating, has done quite a number in Selwyn Township for the, especially on lakefront properties. And it's very popular on properties north of us that have low amount of soil overburden and area to work with. So it's an excellent system. It's a Canadian system, Ontario.
Thank you. Any other questions? We'll move on to the next application, please, Jeanette, A1721.
Okay, the property owner is Jane Ross and the agent is Jeff Ross. The address is 3186 Spring Lane East in the Smith Ward. The applicant purpose of the application is actually twofold. There was a minor variance application that was approved back in 2002, and a number of items, when a recent survey was submitted to the township, we noted that a number of items did not meet with the requirements of the minor variance back in 2002. So the first part of the application is to deal with those issues. And so that would be to increase the maximum lot area of accessory structures from 5% to 7.4%. That will also include the new garage, which I'm going to speak to in a moment, and as well as decrease the minimum setback from high water mark from 30 meters to 14.5 meters and from 30 meters to 12.6 meters to a deck. So I have recommended that the committee grant those variances that I just spoke about. The last part of this application is to allow the property owner to build a detached garage. The existing garage will be removed. Right at this point, the property owner is proposing the attached garage or the detached garage be constructed 0.84 meters from the right of way. I have reviewed the application, I've completed a site visit, and I don't believe that that would maintain the intent of our township zoning bylaw, nor would it be minor. So I have recommended that we defer that part of the application in order to provide the property owner with an opportunity to look at other options to either relocate or reorient or perhaps change the design of the garage or the size of the garage. I have spoken with the applicant today, and he is aware of that, and we'll be looking at some other options. And he will provide something back to the township in order for us to bring that component back to the next meeting. So at this time, I have recommended that the variances as noted on the first page, so to increase the maximum lot coverage of accessory structures to 5% and to 7.4%, as well as to reduce the high water mark setback, be approved, as I believe it meets general intent of the township official plan and zoning bylaw, as well as this variance is desirable for the appropriate development or use of land, building, or structure, and is minor in nature. And then I recommend that the front yard setback be deferred to the next meeting. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Oh, just sorry, one note, we did receive comments from the Conservation Authority, who has no issues with the application.
All right, thank you very much. I understand that the agent Jeff Ross is on the line. Do you have anything you wish to add, Mr. Ross?
No, not at this time. We spoke with Jeanette earlier, and she answered my questions, and we're going to look at new options.
All right, so we'll carry on with the other parts of the application. Is there anyone that has called in that's in opposition to this application, Deputy Clerk?
We have no one else here for this application, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. I'll bring it to committee. Are there any questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to A1821, please.
Thank you. So this applicant is looking to increase the maximum lot coverage of accessory structures from 5% to 7.6%. And this would be in order to construct a sleeping cabin or a bunkie on the property, as well as to erect an accessory structure, which has been labeled as a Quonset hut. So I have completed a review of the application, and I do believe that it meets the general intent and purpose of the township's official plan and zoning bylaw. As well, the variance is desirable for the appropriate development or use of land, building, or structure, and the proposed variance is minor in nature. And I have recommended the variance be granted. I did receive comments from the Conservation Authority, who has no issues with the application. Also received comments from two nearby neighboring property owners. One gentleman, I believe, is on the line tonight to speak to his comments. He has concerns as it relates to a septic system. So the septic system, I did talk to Kathleen earlier today. The septic system would require review because of the bunkie would be considered a bedroom. So before we'd be able to issue a building permit, we would need a permit from the health unit. And Kathleen has no issues with that approach. It's a typical approach that we take. As well as he's concerns with the oversized buildings that are being constructed. These buildings are fairly modest in size. They are increasing the lot coverage of accessory structures slightly. We also have to remember that there's decking on the property that's also increasing that lot coverage. So the built form won't actually be too much over the 5% lot coverage that is permitted in our bylaw. We also received comments from another property owner who has concerns as it relates to Quonset huts and whether or not we should actually be allowing them. But at this point, our township bylaw treats them as an accessory structure and they are permitted within the township. If you have any other further questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you very much. So is the owner on the line, Mr. and Mrs. Hurst?
Madam Chair, I'm not sure. We do have do have someone that's on the phone, and I'm not sure if that's a Mr. or Mrs. Horst.
Okay.
I do know that the neighbor, Mr. Konorowski, is on the line.
All right. Well, I'd like to confirm if one of the people that's on the line is Mr. and Mrs. Horst. Can you please identify yourself? Take yourself off mute. Let me know that if you have anything you wish to add to what Jeanette has given us.
No, not at this time.
Are you Mr. Horst?
Yes.
All right, thank you very much. And we have someone who is opposing this, Mr. Konorowski. Could you identify yourself? Take yourself off mute, please.
Hi, it's just Tanya, Deputy Clerk here. Dave Konorowski, just press *6 to unmute yourself, *6, and it will unmute the phone.
All right, go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Hello.
Yes.
I'm on.
Yes. So what do you have to say, sir?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just concerned about the septic. I've been around here for over 30 years, and I know the history of the property, that the septic wasn't adequate when they even put it in, when they replaced it with the one. And then when they built the house that they have now, I was surprised that they even kept that septic, because there's been smell of septic occasionally, not a lot, but you do smell it. And if they want to put another room in there, like more sleeping quarters, that's ridiculous, because it's just overburdening the area and it's not right. We were also concerned about the overpowering of all the buildings. It's just too much for the area. I don't know. We're trying to keep it so it's like the Quonset doesn't really fit. It's just, I don't know. It's just too much. I have two 53-foot trailers in Oshawa. I'd love to bring them up here just to put them in the property, but I wouldn't do that because it's not proper. I would love to bring them up here, but I can't. It's not right. And to load it up with all these buildings and dump it into here is not right either. I don't really want to see all that stuff. And the septic is definitely got to be checked out, because I know it's been a problem all for the whole history of that property.
All right, Mr. Konorowski, Would you like to speak to this, Jeanette, please?
Yes, for sure.
But I'd like to.
So as I had noted just earlier, I did speak with Kathleen this morning at the health unit. So she's the septic inspector that's going to be working on or is working with this property. She did receive a phone call earlier, either in the day or yesterday, in regards to the septic system and concerns that neighbors had. So she definitely is aware that there's some concerns, and she did identify that prior to, like I said, prior to the issuance of a building permit, they're going to need to have a review of that system done. If the system isn't adequate, then they would be required to upgrade that system.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Konorowski. Are there any other questions? Any other people that have called in, Deputy Clerk?
We have no one else here for this application, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. I'll bring it to committee.
Yeah, we just wanted to be informed of the final inspection. That was all. But
now bring
the decision. Yeah, that's
sure.
The committee, please. Any questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to A1921, please.
Thank you. So the property owner is Ken Turner. There is no agent, and the address is 3135 Cottage Lane in the Smith Ward. So the property owner is requesting variances in order to permit the construction of about a 1,900 square foot two-story addition to an existing dwelling. So he's looking to decrease the minimum setback from the high water mark from 30 meters to 19.8 meters to a dwelling, and as well as to decrease the easterly side yard setback from 3 meters to 2.5 meters for that same dwelling. So I have completed a review of the application under the 4 tests of the Planning Act, and I do believe the general intent and purpose of the Township's official plan and zoning bylaw have been maintained. The variance is desirable for the appropriate development or use of land, building, or structure, and the proposed variance is minor in nature, and I have recommended the committee grant the variance. I'll note that we received comments late in the day from the Conservation Authority who have no objections or concerns with the application.
All right, thank you very much. Is the owner, Ken Turner, on the line?
Madam Chair, I'm not sure. I do have someone on the line that's labeled meeting room. I don't know if that's Mr. Turner.
You'll have to unmute.
Madam Chair, I wonder if the meeting room might be our 6 o'clock deputation, because he did come on briefly.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry, it come up. We have a new computer. It's Robert Hines from Your Own Design Drafting, but it's labeled meeting room. I apologize for the mislabeling. We had a new computer put in this week. I'm on one of your later applications.
Okay, well, right now we're dealing with A1921.
I'm just letting you know which one I am. I'll silence myself again.
Thank you. All right. I'll bring it to the committee. Are there any questions on this application? Seeing none, we'll move on to A2121, please, Jeanette.
Thank you. So the property owner is Brian Thompson, and the Adam is from Timberline. So the agent is Adam Leggett from Timberline Custom Homes, and the address is 2101 Sherman Drive in the Smith Ward. So the applicant is seeking variances in order to construct a boathouse. The boathouse would be located 3 meters from the side lot line. So the minimum side yard setback would be decreased from 10 to 3, as well as there's an increase in the maximum overall lot coverage of all buildings and structures from 20% to 23.9%. So I have completed a review of the application, and I do believe that it meets with the general intent and purpose of the Township's official plan and zoning bylaw. The variance is desirable for the appropriate development or use of land, building, or structure, and the variance is minor in nature. And I have recommended that the variance be granted. We have received comments from Orca who have no issues or concerns with the application. As well, we did receive comments from a neighboring property owner, which were attached to the report. And so she has concerns with the proposed setback, as well as concerns with the boathouse potentially obstructing her view of the property. Although view is not really considered a planning rationale, the agent for the property owner did provide an air photo to be provided to the committee, which I did earlier today, just so that you're able to see the property owner at 2099 where her house is located in relation to where the proposed house would be on 2101. And it's felt that her view would not be overly impacted. If you have any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you very much. Is the owner on the line, Deputy Clerk? The agent is here, Adam Leggett. Have you anything you wish to add?
I am here. I hope they can hear me.
Yes.
Just wanted to note in this for the boathouse, we're not seeking relief in height or maximum size of boathouses as per the zoning bylaws. And I worked back and forth with Jeanette Thompson about where the suitable location of the boathouse should be on this property. The neighboring owner's view is actually we're almost sort of building this behind their house. So the view for their house is almost directly away from the boathouse. I don't know if you had a chance to look at the aerial photos or not, but that's what they depict. So I think that's all I had. If you had any questions, I'm here to answer them.
All right, thank you very much. Actually, I have a question right now.
Yeah.
The photography that you showed, the little red, supposed to be the boathouse?
Yeah, that's my aerial photo didn't have a house on it yet. So that little red blob is more or less the proposed boathouse location.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thanks for clarifying that. So we have someone who's in opposition, Pieta Satimi.
Madam Chair, it's Pieta Satimi speaking. We're not in opposition to the property. We had some questions regarding it, which were answered by Jeanette earlier today, so we are not in opposition.
Thank you very much for that clarification. Was there anyone else that called in that was for or against this application, Deputy Clerk?
We have no one else here for this application, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. I'll bring it to committee. Are there any questions? Anita.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is just with regards to the archaeological assessment. Does an assessment need to be done?
Yeah, the subdivision is actually old enough that one will not have been completed when it was when the subdivision was when it was approved. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to A2221, please.
Thank you. So the applicants are Bob and Michelle Cardwell, and the address is 260 Fights Bay Road in the Smith Ward. So the property owner is looking to construct a garage, and he's looking to increase the maximum height of an accessory structure from 4 meters to 5.2 meters. Since that time, we've received a number of concerns and issues with a number of property owners that are in the area. So Mr. Cardwell has come back with a plan to lower the height slightly by about a foot. So the actual minor variance now would be from to increase the maximum height from 4 meters to 4.9 meters. So he's been able to take some of the height from the walls down. He took that down by about 6 inches, as well as change the pitch of the roof in order for it to bring the height down. So I have completed a review of the application, and I do believe that it meets the general intent and purpose of the Township's official plan and zoning bylaw, as well as it's desirable for the appropriate development of land, building, or structure, and the proposed variance is minor in nature, and I have recommended the committee grant the variance. And again, that would be from the maximum height of an accessory structure to increase it from 4 meters to 4.9 meters as opposed to 5.2. I have received comments from the Conservation Authority who have no issues with the application. As I noted, we did receive several comments from neighboring property owners that had concern with the application as it relates to their view of the water, a potential increase in traffic for a commercial building, as well as a sensitive land uses or sensitive environmental sensitive features in the area. I did want to note that this is a lakeshore residential property, so commercial uses are not permitted. As it relates to home occupation, the only type of home occupation is one that is within the existing dwelling. So you would not be able to run a business out of this garage. As I noted, he was trying to mitigate some of the concerns by lowering the height. We've also received one comment or one set of comments from a neighboring property owner that he is in support of the application. If you have any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you very much. Mr. Cardwell, you are with us tonight. Is there anything you'd like to add what Jeanette has said?
Yes, I'm here. Some of the concerns, can you hear me? Yes. Okay. Some of the concerns that the people were bringing up on Fifes Avenue was access to my property. I have one access from 260 Fifes Bay Road, and I'm going to keep that one access because it allows me to monitor people accessing my property. I do not want another driveway on the property off Fifes Avenue. My concern is if somebody could access my property and maybe damage something or take something on my property. So that was one thing. I do have a quite forest area in my property. It's very difficult to see the building from anywhere other than a little spot at Fifes Avenue, which I'm willing to plant some trees there just to extract the building. The building will be in color that would be a very dark forest green with black trim, which isn't very loud or very colors that would stand out very much. I like to match it with the rest of my property I have there. And it will not be used for any kind of commercial use. I do own a business, but I have no intent on keeping the business where it is now. And I'm going to actually probably retire in a few years. So it's mainly meant for RV. I got 3 boats, those kinds of things. And I just want a workspace on the one end of it. And I do have a quality builder I've hired to build the structure.
Great. Thank you very much. Deputy Clerk, is there anyone who is on the line that is for or against this property?
No, we have no one else here for this property.
Very much. I'll bring it to committee. Any questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to A2321, please.
Thank you. So the property owners are Daryl and Nicole Plod, and the address is 1353 Gale Park Drive in the Emmitsmore Ward. The property owners are requesting a decrease in minimum setback from the high water mark from 30 meters to 25.2 meters in order to construct an addition to an existing garage. So I have completed a review of the application under the test of the Planning Act, and it is my opinion that the general intent and purpose of the Township's official plan and zoning bylaw have been maintained. The variance is desirable for the appropriate development or use of land, building, or structure, and the proposed variance is minor in nature, and I have recommended that the variance be granted. We have received comments from the Conservation Authority, who has no issues or concerns with the application.
Thank you very much. I understand the owner, Daryl Plod, is on the line. Do you have anything you wish to add, sir?
You want to add anything?
No, that's fine. As far as what we're doing is we're just building that garage off the front. So that minor variance that was taken out, I thought it'd be okay because the building's not encroaching more onto the lake, because we more or less have the house in the way of it, the existing house. So we thought it would be fine because it's being built actually the other way, away from the high water mark.
Mm-hmm. Right. And do we have anybody, Deputy Clerk, that is in opposition to this application?
We have no one else here for this application, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. I'll bring it to committee. Are there any questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to A2521, please.
Thank you. So the property owner is Vito Falconeri, and our agent is Robert Hines from Your Own Design. The property address is 2570 Fire Route 37 in the Smith Ward. So the applicant is looking to decrease the minimum setback from the high water mark from 30 meters to 17.5 meters in order to permit the demolition of the existing dwelling and then the replacement of that dwelling with a new structure. So I have completed the review of the application under the 4 tests of the Planning Act. And the general intent and purpose of the Township's official plan and zoning bylaw have been maintained. The variance is desirable for the appropriate development or use of land, building, or structure, and the proposed variance is minor in nature, and I have recommended that the variance be granted. We have received comments from the Conservation Authority, who has no issues or concerns with the application. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Great, thank you very much. I understand the agent is on the line. Robert Hines, do you have anything you wish to add, sir?
No, I don't think I need to add anything. We've just replacing this building and trying to work with the setback of the existing property.
Understand. And there's a Michelle Scott on the line. Are you in favor or against, ma'am?
In favor. I'm here actually with Vito Falconeri.
Okay, thank you very much. And Deputy, is there anyone that was on the line that was against this property?
There's no one else on the line for this property.
Thank you very much. Back to committee. Do you have any questions? Yes, Donna.
I was under the understanding that our minimum size for houses is 1,200 square feet. Has that been changed?
No, it hasn't, but this is replacing even smaller dwellings. So we're getting closer to the right size that we're supposed to be.
Okay, it's very appreciative that they're not overdeveloping the lot, for sure. We don't see that very often, so that is good.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions on this application? Seeing none, we'll move on to A2621, please.
Okay, thank you. The property owners are Eric and Sarah Severan, and the address is 660 Garden Road in the Annismore Ward. So the applicant is looking to increase the maximum lot coverage of accessory structures from 5% to 6.3%, and they're asking for this in order to construct a detached garage. The detached garage would be about 400 square feet in size. It's fairly modest. I have completed a review of the application. I do believe it meets the general intent and purpose of the Township's official plan and zoning bylaw. The variance is desirable for the appropriate development or use of land, building, or structure, and the variance is minor in nature, and I have recommended the committee grant the variance. And we did receive comments from the Conservation Authority who had no issues with the application.
Okay, thank you very much. And the owner, Sarah Severan, is on the line. Do you have anything you wish to add, ma'am?
Hi there. No, nothing to add. Just we're looking for a place to store our things safely and just tidy up our lot. So thank you for hearing us today.
Thank you very much. Anybody, Deputy Clerk, that was against this application?
We have no one else here for this application, Madam Chair.
To bring it to committee, are there any questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to A2721, please.
Okay, thank you. So the property owners are Jessica Hill Park and Jeff Park, and the property is 317 Glenwood Street in the Smith Ward. The applicants are looking to decrease the minimum rear yard setback from 7.5 meters to 5.2 meters to allow them to construct a deck and stairs. So I have completed a review of the application, and I do believe the general intent and purpose of the Township's official plan and zoning bylaw has been maintained. The variance is desirable for the appropriate development or use of land, building, or structure, and the proposed variance is minor in nature, and therefore I recommended that the committee grant the variances. We did receive comments from the Conservation Authority who has no issues or concerns with the application.
Thank you very much. I see Jeff Park is on the line, one of the owners. Do you have anything you wish to add, sir?
We're present, Madam Chair. It's Jessica Hill, and no further comments, just available for questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anyone that is registered to speak against this application? Deputy Clerk?
We have no one else here for this application, Madam.
Thank you very much. I'll bring it to committee. Are there any questions? Seeing none, I need a motion to approve the applications. Anita, seconded by Donna, all in favor? That's carried, thank you. And we'll move on to the deferred matter.
Is there not one part of one of those that we're actually deferring?
Yes.
But it was in the recommendation.
Okay.
Yeah. So we'll move on to the deferred matter, A4120, please, Jeanette.
Thank you. So the owner of this property is David James Edwards Evans, and the agent is Paul Hutter, and the address is 2182 Cedarwood Lane, the Smith Ward. I look at the right report. Sorry. My apologies, I moved it aside. Okay, so if you recall, at the last committee meeting, the applicant, we heard this application, and there were concerns related to a boathouse, reduction side yard setback for a boathouse from the neighboring property owner. So we deferred the application to allow the property owner to seek some alternative solutions. At this time, the property owner would just like to move forward with actually the construction related to the addition to the house, as well as a detached garage. So he's withdrawn the request to reduce the side yard setback for the boathouse, and we're just moving forward with the other variances to allow for the construction to occur related to the dwelling. So I have recommended that the variances be granted, and if you have any questions, I would be happy to answer them.
Great. So is there any questions from the committee? Yes, Anita.
So the person who was in opposition or was presenting a disagreement with regards to the boathouse, has that person been informed that the boathouse part of the application has been withdrawn?
Yes, he has, and then he did provide a bit of a response to us in regards to some concerns that he had that the deck construction would eventually impact the boathouse, and then the boathouse would need to be closer to the side lot line. That may or may not occur, but the property owner, because he withdrew that component of the application, if he ever decides he wants to do something with that boathouse and he's not going to maintain the existing side yard setback, he would have to apply for another variance, so will be debated at that time.
Any other questions? I'm looking for a motion to approve this application. Moved by Andy, seconded by Donna. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. There's no correspondence. The minutes of March the 23rd for Committee of Adjustment. Moved by Anita, seconded by Andy. All in favor? And a motion.
Madam Chair, just before we adjourn, if I could have a moment.
Yeah.
This is Jeanette's, I believe, last time that she will be with us for a Committee of Adjustment. I just wanted to take a moment to thank her for all of her hard work and effort and energy over the years for helping us as a committee through all of these applications. So Jeanette, thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Jeanette.
Thank you for the time.
Yes. Yes, Donna.
Yes, I also want to thank Jeanette, and I wish her all the best in her new position, and we will miss you.
Anita.
It's been an honor to work with you since 2006, Jeanette, and like the rest have said, we wish you the very best. I wish you the very best in your future endeavors, and we sure are going to miss you.
And Jerry.
Who's Jeanette? Jeanette, all the best to you, kid. And I don't know whether this is possible or not, but can Jeanette do the adjournment tonight?
No.
Damn it. I tried, Jeanette.
She cannot, but I just want to add to what all my colleagues have said. We will miss you, Jeanette, and all the best in your new endeavors. Take care. So, Jerry, you're going to adjourn. Seconded by Anita. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you very much. Next meeting is May 25th.
Colleagues, we're back for 6 o'clock start for council.
Council, we're all set with live streaming. So whenever you're ready.
Thank you very much. I am going to call the Tuesday, April 27th council meeting to order and ask everybody to begin by undertaking a moment of silent reflection. Thank you. Members of the public, staff, presenters, and members of council, please be advised that meetings are broadcast and recorded and made available on the internet. Is there any declaration of pecuniary interest? General nature thereof. Madam Clerk, please note that there was none noted. Our first item is the minutes. We are looking at the minutes of April the 13th, which were circulated. Do you have any questions about those? A motion to approve, Sherry, seconded by Donna. All those in favor? Carry. Okay, colleagues, we'll move into the rest of the agenda. We have a very full agenda. We have a couple of deputations. We have a couple of public meetings. We have a number of staff reports to deal with. So we'll move through this as quickly as we can. So our first deputation is David Britton from the Trent Severan Waterway. Welcome, David. I'm going to ask you in just a minute to make your presentation. I know that there were a number of inquiries that your presentation has sparked some interest, and so we pass that along to you. So hopefully you'll be able to respond to some of that. When David's finished, what I'm going to do is ask each of the councillors to ask any questions. I'll start with Councillor Ballantyne, then Councillor Heron, Councillor Locke, and then the Deputy Mayor. When Sherry is finished asking her questions, I'm going to surrender the chair to the Deputy Mayor, because I do wish to make an intervention and to offer a motion. So, and then when we're finished with that, we'll move on to our second delegation. So, David, the floor is yours. Please go ahead.
Thanks, Ms. Mayor. You can hear me okay? Perfect. Okay, so I'll start with wild rice on Pigeon Lake. I know that's definitely the item that has sparked a lot of interest. I do have a few updates on some other Trent Severan Waterway matters that might be of interest, so I'll leave that to the end and maybe after the questions. So just in terms of the of where we're at with management of wild rice on Pigeon Lake. So, I mean, it continues to be one of our most challenging issues to manage on the Trent Severan Waterway. And I mean, it has been going on for quite a number of years, and there's been a lot of discussion, and certainly we appreciate that there is a lot of frustration out there in terms of the progress on the file. And we've spent a lot of time over the last year engaging with both First Nations and with the shoreline property owners on Pigeon Lake, and trying to work forward to a management approach to the lake that really tries to balance the harvesting rights of First Nations with the concerns of the shoreline property owners around access and safety. And so generally speaking, the approach that we've been trying to work towards is one where there's a balance between identifying some areas on Pigeon Lake that would be protected for the growth and harvesting of wild rice, and then balanced against that, having some kind of framework in place that would allow for the permitting and consideration of permits for vegetation removal in shoreline areas and in access channels to get to the main channel. And I think from our conversations, with both sides, I think there is a general agreement that those two components are important elements of the strategy. I think another thing that's changed in the last year since I would have made a presentation last year to this council is that we have, I think, sort of escalated or moved the discussion upwards in both sides. So at the Parks Canada level, our Senior Vice President of Operations has been involved in the file for the last year and has had a number of meetings both with the shoreline property owners as well as the Chief of Curve Lake. And so we have on the First Nation side moved that conversation to the Chief and Council level rather than the staff level where we were having it a year ago and previously. So, I mean, I think that's the positive. I mean, we still don't have agreement on the terms within those kind of two those two baskets of things. So in terms of what the size and location of protected zones would be, and I mean we've certainly received some proposals from the shoreline property owners, and have talked about those with the First Nations, and we're still very much working with the First Nations around what a framework for vegetation removal would be and the conditions under which we would issue permits for vegetation removal. And those are really the two things that we're focusing our discussions with the First Nations on now. So I know this issue has been going on for a long time, and that we're still working on it is not a message that is necessarily one that people are eager to hear. But I do think we have moved forward somewhat in the last number of months, but we still have some distance to go before getting to a place on this file that we that's going to provide some balance between those two factors. And so, I mean, are we going to get to a place this year where we could issue vegetation removal permits? I don't know. I certainly wouldn't want to commit to that. I think one area we want to explore a little bit more on the sort of safety side is whether there's a possibility to look at a pilot like the communal access channels that lead out to the main channel, and whether there's a way to move forward with that and establish some type of approach that we could apply to future vegetation removals. But I mean, that's a subject of discussion, not something that's been agreed to. So I think that's kind of the status update. I guess just to address, I know there was quite a range of questions that were asked. So I did want to speak to some of them. I may not get to all of them. I didn't receive them until quite late. But I mean, I know from our conversations with the shoreline property owners, I mean, we have spoken to many of these topics in other conversations. But just in terms of the approach that we're taking, or why we're having the involvement of the First Nations in the situation. So at a basic level, the harvesting of wild rice is a constitutionally protected right, and from the federal government's perspective, we've got a responsibility to consult on anything that presents a potential negative impact on treaty rights. And so that does include the issuing of a permit for the removal of wild rice. So that's a process that we must follow. Beyond that, the government as a whole has put a strong emphasis on reconciliation and working with Indigenous people. And so as part of the federal government, we follow that direction. And on the Trent-Severan Waterway in general, we need to work with First Nations on a range of issues beyond just this one. And so we have an interest in an ongoing dialogue with them. We often have gotten the question about, why it's us interfacing with First Nations. I think the message that we've received from them is that they want to engage on a nation-to-nation basis. And so their discussions on this issue they would like to have with the federal crown. So in terms of like who we represent and when we're at the table, like we do represent the federal crown and the Trent-Severan Waterway, Parks Canada, the manager of the Trent-Severan Waterway, but we definitely bring the perspectives of the shoreline residents with us to the table, because we know that they are stakeholders, they've got a strong interest, they're impacted by the situation. We want to make sure that we are communicating their perspectives as well. One other thing that was raised in the comments I just wanted to mention is on the enforcement side. And so we have been considering whether we need a greater warden presence on Pigeon Lake, given the tensions that are surrounding the wild rice issue. We haven't made a final decision on that point. It's still under discussion. But having a warden presence on an ongoing basis, I mean, there are a number of reasons why we would want to do that. It does give us a little bit more of a presence on Pigeon Lake, which we don't normally have. We don't have operational staff there typically on a regular basis. Allows our staff to build relations with both sides and hopefully have an opportunity to diffuse tensions if they're arising. I know there's concerns about ticketing. We did issue one ticket for vegetation removal last year, and so I mean we understand the sensitivity of that, and certainly have that conversation with the wardens. But at the end of the day, they are also enforcement officers, and they do swear an oath to sort of enforce the provisions of the regulations of Parks Canada, and under the historic canal regulations, vegetation removal without a permit is an infraction. And so we're just trying to balance that situation with the pressures. So I think that's an update. I'm sure there's some questions, so I'm happy to take them.
Yeah, I think, colleagues, to David's point, let's do the questions on the wild rice issue, and then I'll make the motion, and then David can come back with the other non-wild rice issues to finish up his presentation. Is that okay with everybody? I'm getting nods. Okay, Donna, you go first.
Yes, thank you very much, through you. And thank you, David, for your presentation. And we appreciate the fact that you're available to hear the numerous concerns and troubling conditions that Parks Canada and the federal government have allowed to exist and to continue. I have worked for more years than I care to count on trying to help the residents with this situation. And I don't have a question, but I want to kind of summarize or give a synopsis of how this is all unfolded over the years. And really, it has been mishandled in a number of ways. So we do respect the treaty rights, but the wild rice conditions have gotten out of hand with no consideration given to the shoreline residents. In 2015, shoreline residents were issued a group permit in order to cut rice in front of their properties in order to access the main channel for safe boat exits. Mid-season, these permits were revoked. The residents gave them back in good faith with the promise from Parks Canada that negotiations would occur with the First Nations in order to establish some sort of compromise. And here it is 6 years later, and that has not happened. Rice cutting permits were never issued to shoreline residents since that day. Conditions have gotten steadily worse each year, and now the situation is untenable and very unsafe to be operating a boat in the heavy rice fields. As evidenced in the 2020 documentary, Cottagers and Indians, the rice has been seeded right up to the shoreline and around docks. This was nothing more than a mean, vindictive act. In the crowded conditions around shorelines and docks, this rice cannot even be harvested with an airboat. Something has to be done to help shoreline residents contend with one individual who has created this unsafe, unmanageable growth of rice. A lake management plan needs to be created so that all parties can coexist. And later, as the mayor has mentioned, we will be putting forward a motion to try and help move this forward.
Thank you, Donna. Jerry?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to David. David, good to see you again. How many years have you been coming now to give us a report on the update in the Trent Severan? Just hold up your fingers. There you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. This is my second year, Chair.
Second year there. So basically, because it's the same lip service we've been getting, and I mean no offense to you, but it's the same lip service we've been getting for the last 10 years here, and they keep just changing the date. We get the same spiel. And again, I mean no disservice to you, but it's just getting a little redundant, as you mentioned. It looks like there's some new blood within this, the Lakeshore owners, and there's a lot of good ideas as I've been reading through these emails. Now I don't have prepared remarks made. I'm going through my chicken scratch, so you'll have to bear with me here. But the one guy with the how many hours a year in a typical work year to, you know, comparing that to how many hours it would take to unload or to harvest all that rice in Pigeon Lake, well, so call it Rice Lake now, Pigeon Lake. You know, it's unfathomable. It's impossible to do. This gentleman, it just seems to be, you know, spiteful and as Donna mentioned, throwing it in under docks where you can't do it. It's getting to the point of absolute ridiculousness. So I've got a couple questions for you. And basically with the nation to nation thing, what would you say to the fact that Mr. Weetung is actually harvesting the rice right now? The landowners can't do anything. They can't even try and scoop out the weeds that are growing underneath the rice. Does that not make it apparent that he's already winning and now the landowners have to prove that they've got a right?
So, I mean, as I mentioned, like for the harvest, that he does have a constitutional right to harvest wild rice. So, I mean, that is true. And the way our regulations are constructed, there's a requirement for a permit to remove any vegetation from the Trent Severan Waterway other than harvesting. So, I mean, it's not, I understand the point that you're making, that it's there, you know, that it's seemingly not a sort of an even playing field, but they're operating under different parameters.
Okay, so what would you say then for the gentleman, I believe it was Mr. Wood, who got the permit that day from the proper parties, was in the middle of harvesting weeds, and then got shut down by, you know, everybody shows up in his living room from the OPP to you guys to, you know, everybody. What do you say to that? If a permit was issued and then he's not allowed to do it. So obviously there is a fail-safe in there that people can get permits.
So I mean, I wasn't around in 2015, so I don't know exactly what the circumstances were, but my understanding is that, I mean, that the permits were issued by the Trent Severan Waterway, and that there was, you know, there were issues raised by the First Nations about lack of consultation on those permits, that pointing out that, you know, the removal of wild rice is an impact on their harvesting rights. And so I think Parks Canada approached Mr. Wood, and he, as I think someone mentioned previously, I believe Larry did voluntarily turn in his permits. And so since that time, I mean, that's sort of I guess the genesis of our dialogue with the First Nations around what provisions we put around that vegetation removal that they feel doesn't have a negative impact on their harvesting rights. So, and that's the discussion that we're continuing today.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and I mean, I understand Larry turned his permits in, but, you know, you get a couple cops sitting there and a couple bigwigs from the brass there from the Trent Severan and everything can be a little intimidating. So with the vindictive nature, and I watched the Indians and Lake Drew Hayden's movie there. Very vindictive, this Mr. Weetung, and by tossing it underneath the docks and just doing it for the sake of doing it. You know, I don't think that's right. And if the government can't do something about this to resolve this for our people that all of us on council here, we represent, I think we almost need to encourage them to do what they need to do to enjoy their property that they pay good money for, that they pay taxes for, because I think we're doing a disservice. So if that's the way they want to play it, like Mr. Weetung wants to play it that way, I encourage every one of you people out there watching to do the same goddamn thing. That's it for me.
Okay, David, I'm not gonna. You don't need to answer that. And I understand the frustration of Councillor Heron. I just want to say something, and then I'll turn over the rest. I appreciate the frustration, but as a council, or I'll speak for myself. As frustrating as the situation is, it's really important that everybody abide by the law as it exists today. This is a very, very difficult situation. We're going to have to find a way to do it. It's really challenging. The frustration is palpable. palpable, sorry, and Jerry expresses it well. But please, everybody, the solution lies in respect and abiding by the law. So I just wanted to make that comment. So Anita, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have any questions. I just want to say that I agree, especially with what Donna said. I know that she especially seems to be on the front of the firing line and has worked tirelessly to try to assist towards some kind of solution. So for the most part, I agree with my colleagues that there does seem to be a little bit of forward movement, David, since you've kind of taken over the helm. And you were commenting about two specific things. One had to do with vegetation removal, and another had to do with growing zones. And I really hope that in your work with the First Nations, especially the Chief and Council, that a reasonable solution or compromise can be determined, because I'm sure that they also are, maybe not as frustrated as we are, but I think it's hopeful that we can come to some kind of reasonable compromise or solution, especially with your two comments about vegetation removal and growing zones.
Thank you, Anita. Sherry.
Thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. Written, thank you for your presentation. My question is, when was the last time all parties involved met to discuss the strategy for a lake management plan?
So as I mentioned, we've been meeting, I guess, on two tracks, one track with the shoreline property owners and one track with the First Nations. And so I can't give you exact dates, but we would have met with both, in the month of March, certainly.
This year.
Yeah, we probably had, 3 or 4 meetings over with both parties over the course of, from the fall to the spring.
It's very difficult trying to come to some compromise when you have to go to one party and then go and talk to the other party and let them know what first party's problems are. And I see this as one of the reasons that you're not getting anywhere, is because you need to have, with a compromise, you need to have both parties at the table, and one of the parties is refusing to sit there. 2 years ago, at a public meeting on wild rice for Pigeon Lake, our MPP pledged to form a committee to resolve the issue. And we are 2 years later with nothing accomplished. And I want to know what it's going to take to resolve it. Parks Canada has responsibility to provide safe navigable passage through our Trent Severan Waterway lakes. At this point, this is not the case. And I hear that this individual plans to seed in other lakes. On another issue, and maybe you're going to speak to this after we're done with the wild rice, but there was a realty group committee that met, and the last time they met was 2 years ago, and they were talking about how to get permitting on the Trent Severan Waterway in a timely fashion for boathouses and docks. And right now, I'm told permits take up to 9 months. And it is to the point that people aren't bothering to get a permit. They're just going ahead and doing it without one. Mr. Britton, anarchy is prevailing here for both issues. And I think our residents deserve better, and it is not acceptable. So I hope that in the very near future, you can come to some resolve with this, because this is not good. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry. And I think you meant MP, not MPP.
Right.
Right. David, if you're gonna speak to permitting in the later part of your presentation, then I think you can answer Sherry on that point then. But to Sherry's point about the committee that came out of that meeting a couple of years ago, maybe you could just address that a little bit.
Yeah, I'm actually not aware of that was a sort of a deliverable that came out of that public meeting. And I guess I can follow up and just inform myself what the nature of the commitment that the MP made. I know that we've had, like, allude to your previous point. I mean, we are kind of stuck doing kind of shuttle diplomacy between two groups, and I mean, that's not necessarily the way we would want to do it, but it's, you know, it's the way that we have to do it, because that's the way that the First Nations prefer to operate in terms of dealing directly with the federal government.
Okay, so just before we get on to the rest of it, I'm going to turn the chair over to the deputy mayor so that I can propose a motion.
Right, thank you. So, Mr. Mayor, you have a motion to bring forward.
You, Madam Chair, listening to all that has been said here tonight, and let me also extend my appreciation for Mr. Britton for being here tonight. So I'd like to move the following motion, moved by myself, and Councillor Ballantyne has indicated, I've shared it with her, she's indicated that she's willing to second it. And I'll read it. Whereas the desire to develop a management plan for Pigeon Lake has been a long-standing request, and whereas the development of the management plan needs to recognize the treaty and inherent rights of Indigenous communities, and whereas many of our residents have interest in the waters of Pigeon Lake and own adjacent property, and whereas any plans to be negotiated in a government-to-government process between the Government of Canada and the Treaty 20 First Nations, and whereas progress on this issue has been very slow. Therefore, be resolved that Selwyn Council send correspondence to the Minister of the Environment, copied to Parks Canada, Member of Parliament Monsef, and surrounding townships, calling on the Government of Canada to develop a lake management plan for Pigeon Lake with Curve Lake First Nation and other Treaty 20 First Nation, and that the plan addresses, among other things, the issue of planting and harvesting of wild rice, and that it is consistent with treaty and inherent Indigenous rights and takes into account the interests of local residents. And further, that Selwyn Township send correspondence to Parks Canada urging them to monitor and enforce regulations and ensure safe boating for all practices that are exercised in Pigeon Lake. And further, that Selwyn Township requests that Parks Canada organize a meeting by June 30th with representatives of local municipal governments, and that the meeting discuss issues relating to a proposed management plan, and that the meeting be used to provide Parks Canada a further understanding of the matters raised by residents, and that the matters identified be communicated in their negotiations with First Nations governments. I move that. Donna, I think it's in the second.
Donna?
I second that. Yep.
Want to speak to it?
No, I think it's very clear.
Is there any? Seeing none, I will call the vote. All those in favor? No.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. So David, you mentioned there was 3 or 4 other points that you wanted to touch on, so the floor is back to you.
Thank you. Yeah, just briefly, and permitting wasn't one of them, but I'll take the opportunity to speak to that. So we've definitely heard similar, concerns that you've raised here about the length of time it takes to issue permits. So we are definitely working on an approach to shorten those times. Over the last year, we've had a couple of issues that we've had to grapple with. Part of it was COVID-19. Part of it was trying to integrate new environmental assessment legislation into our process. And that stuff has been done. And so that will speed things up. The main thing that we're doing, though, that we're hopeful will really reduce the wait times is implementing an online permitting system. So it's not so it will be automated and allow staff to process things more quickly. So we're kind of in the pilot stage of getting that up and running, but we hope in the next several months it'll be online and people will be able to use it. And that system will enable us to track things better and move them through the process much more quickly. So I had a few shorter things that I wanted to speak about that may be of interest to council. So one is just our operational season for the coming year. So we are still planning, despite the current stay-at-home order, for an opening of the Trent Severan Waterway on May 21st with normal operating hours. We expect to have in place COVID-19 protocols that are similar to what you would have seen last year. So lock stations are closed to the public. Ropes we have ropes in place in the outside areas where our staff are working at the locks just to maintain some social distancing. We have a reduced washroom offer. We have some modified approaches to how we would assist boaters handling their boats through lockage that don't necessarily involve as close contact as we might have had in the past. So we're getting ready to be up and running. We do have reason to expect a busy season. So as I think everyone knows, boat sales and boat licensing have been extremely high over the last year or so. We've also had very strong advanced sales on seasons passes for the Trent Severan Waterway and strong booking of our camping units. So we do expect to have a lot of people on the water going through the locks, and also expecting some strong land-based visitation as we saw last year. And we did have some situations, and I think probably you guys did as well, where there were situations with sort of crowding and garbage. And so taking some measures where we know we had issues last year to try and mitigate to the extent possible. Maybe just pause there if there's any questions on operations.
Jerry, and then Anita.
I get through you to David. Is there any talk of adding some hours either at the beginning or the end of the day there to handle the volume of traffic that'll be coming through?
So no, not this year. I think we'll be operating with the same hours. I mean, it's kind of limited by the staff complement we have, and we don't have additional staff. So we'll be keeping the same standard hours that we've had for the last number of years.
Anita?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So does Parks Canada have campgrounds? And if they do, I understand that in some of the other areas, people are buying up or reserving campsites, and then they turn around and sell them at a huge profit. Some campgrounds, I think you can't transfer it to another person. So whatever name is on the reservation is the person that has to actually utilize that reservation. So are you finding that your campgrounds, campsites, or whatever are being snapped up, and what's the safeguard you've got in place so that these can't be sold at increased prices?
So we don't have a lot of reservable camping on the Trent Severan Waterway. So as you may know, like if you're mooring your boat, a part of the mooring is you can camp on the lock station grounds. We do have reservable units called Authentics, and they're kind of like a hybrid between a cabin and a tent for sort of a more upscale glamping experience, as they say. So we only have those in a couple of locations, at Douro and at Rosedale. And we're not bringing them online until later in the season, just to sort of get ourselves up and running before we sort of add that complexity to staff's operations at the lock stations. So they'll be online in June and July, but they're reservable for about the last 2 weeks, and they did go very quickly. And so we haven't sort of heard from people that, there were issues with them and like people buying like big blocks of them. Like they have been reserved in like what you would expect, weekends, a few days here and there. We do our online camping is run by a sort of a third party that is an expert in that, and I understand they do have some security measures that prevent bots from going in and buying large blocks of campgrounds. So not a situation that we've seen on the Trent Severan Waterway.
Thank you. David, was there any other subjects?
Just one other thing I was going to mention was some of our infrastructure projects. And so, as you might know, we've had a number of infrastructure projects ongoing for the last 5 years or so. Many of those large projects are coming to an end now. And so, for example, we have the 3 dams that were under construction on the Otonabee at Lot 23, 24, and 25 south of Lakefield. And so all 3 of those dams are now at or near completion. There's some minor concrete work being done. There's some demolition of the old dams that needs to be done, but we're mostly down to addressing, the routine deficiencies with contractors and site restoration after the fact. So that's nice to get those projects completed. I think the other project that's probably in, or at least partially in, or on the boundaries with Selwyn is Burley Falls. And I think everybody's aware that we had a complicated situation there in January with a blockade put in place by some of the local Indigenous community. We were able to negotiate an end to that blockade, and so we're now in discussions with them about the project. In parallel, we're also working with Curb Lake, and we've worked with both those groups on some fisheries monitoring this spring below the dam that went fairly well. So our tentative timeline is to move forward with the construction project this summer. That's pending some of those ongoing discussions with First Nations. I don't think we have any other projects in Selwyn, but you can correct me if I'm wrong, or if you have any questions about our projects anywhere else nearby.
The only, I don't see anything from anybody else. The old maintenance site in Lakefield. How are we doing on that?
Yeah, so that site that was formerly our shops complex in Lakefield is a building that we currently use only for cold storage. It has no utilities, water, sewer, electricity currently in those buildings. A couple of years ago, we were approached by an arts collective who were interested in licensing that land to redevelop it as a studio, workshop, gallery type of facility. So we did go out with a public notice of intent in 2019. And there were no other sort of takers on that, and or sort of counter proposals. And so we have moved forward with them and they've moved into, I guess, a more detailed planning process around that. So we're waiting for a detailed proposal from them. We still have to do our due diligence on that proposal. So it's sort of not on the cusp of going forward, but we're moving in that direction with that group.
Okay, thank you, David, and thank you very much for taking the time. I know we've kept you longer than you probably anticipated, so but we do appreciate that you were here, and thank you. So colleagues, we need a motion to receive the presentation. I see Anita has her hand up and Donna seconded it. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you, David.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Thanks. Okay, colleagues, we'll now move on to our second presentation. Richard is going to go through our financial statements. And I think I saw Richard there, so there he is.
Good evening, everyone. Pleasure to be here. So tonight I hope to take you through a quick tour of the financial results and draft audited financial statements for December 31st, 2019. So I'll go through that and make a few comments as we move through. I do realize too we're on a bit of a time constraint here, so then I will just start with the presentation. We do this in a presentation format, a little easier to follow than the detailed financial statements. So moving along to the second page of the presentation, it just reflects the important part of the independent auditor's report, which is our report on the financial statements, and it's the second paragraph of the 2-page document that, in our opinion, the accompanying consolidated financial statements present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the township and the results of its operations and its cash flows for the year then ended in accordance with Canadian public sector accounting standards, or more commonly known as PSAB. So that is your standard clean unqualified auditor's report. And keep in mind when it says consolidated, the numbers we'll look at, they do include the operations of the Public Library Board as well. So that's a summary of the auditor's report. Next slide is just a summary of the audit procedures that we go through involving looking at minutes, doing a significant amount of testing, and as well too reviewing your systems, documentations, and the related controls, both within the inflows and the outflows of your funds, and as well too looking at journal entries as well, things that are done to adjust the numbers that you see. And as well too, now the audit is complete, pending council approval of the financial statements, receipt of the representation letter, which I believe we've just recently received, which management states to the best of their knowledge and belief, they've provided us with complete and accurate information up until the date of the auditor's report, and as well too receipt of legal letter inquiries that do get sent out to your lawyers, just ensuring that there are no unknown liabilities that haven't been reflected. As well too, there were no difficulties encountered during the audit, no changes to our plan. Our audit plan was delayed, and that's partially due to the impacts of COVID and getting the information remotely, and as well too with the implementation of a new entire financial system at the township as well over the last year. As well too, there were no disagreements or difficulties with management, and yes, and we did receive excellent cooperation from management and staff. And as noted, there is a subsequent events note for the impacts of COVID. And overall, there were no unadjusted differences. So the schedule of unadjusted differences does not have anything on it. So you got a clean schedule there. So there was nothing there that we found that wasn't adjusted for. So now we'll just take a look at the financial results at the end of that year. Overall, the municipality still stands in good shape, and the financial statements are first broken down between financial assets. So these are assets that are either cash or will be turned into cash. Overall, cash did increase year over year, and that's due to an increase in reserves, as well as some additional gas tax funding that was flowed in 2019 that you still had on hand for about $550,000 at the end of the year. Your investments just grew by growth year over year. You were able to reduce your receivables, so now they're predominantly composed of HST rebate and water and sewer receivables. As well, your taxes receivable continue to decline, which is a good sign. So you are converting those into cash, and as a percentage of your total levy, it was 6.8% in 2018, and that dropped to 5.7% in 2019. And so you're still well within the low risk range as identified by the ministry. And then as well too, you had some inventories held for resale, so total financial assets of about $23.5 million. And then the next page is just a graphical display of those numbers that we just saw, and you can see that over the last 5 years, yes, your cash was the largest financial asset. Next, we go to the financial liability. So these are the amounts that you owe to others. Overall, consistent with your decline in receivables, you had a decrease in payables as well. At the end of the prior year, you had some holdbacks that were outstanding for some capital projects, and as well just a little lower trade payables at the end of 2019. As mentioned earlier, the obligatory reserve funds, the main increase there is the additional gas tax funding that you received that you still had on hand at the end of the year. Your deferred revenue of almost $360,000 predominantly is made up of some OCIF funding that you still have on hand. Your long-term debt during the year, you were able to pay off the first loan for the Lakefield Smith Community Center. So the one loan remains for the FIP program. Your landfill closure and post-closure liability, that just represents the estimated cost to close and finish, sorry, to close the Smith site and to continue monitoring at the Ennismore site, and just with some changing estimates and some changes in factors of both discount rates and interest rates. That amount did increase year over year. Keep in mind that's one of these items that you don't have to budget for, since a lot of the costs for that are already built into your budget, which is very similar to the employee future benefits. That's the cost of providing the benefits to your employees post-retirement, and as well to those costs for those premiums you already have built into your budget. So both of those items did increase year over year, leaving you at about almost $6.9 million in liabilities. And then the next page is the graphical display of that over time. And you can see there the payables will depend on how many holdbacks and capital projects you have ongoing at the end of the year. Next is your non-financial assets. So these are assets that you hold and do not normally turn into cash, and that would be in your case, the net book value of your tangible capital assets. As you can see there, you were able to increase your net book value base year over year. And then following to that is your quick review of the statement of operations. So within the budget column, if you take a look there, you will see within a PSAB budget, you can have an annual surplus, whereas setting your tax rates, of course, you're not allowed to have an unbalanced budget. So the first top of the page there just shows the impacts on a PSAB basis, and then the lower part does the reconciliation of those non-PSAB items that you also though have to address within your tax rate budget. And as you can see at the very bottom of the page, things do come down to zero and they do balance out. So a number of the larger things do relate to your tangible capital assets and your reserve and reserve funds, additions and transfers to and from. I think then when you look at the actual column for 2019, there are a few items you will see there that also form part of the reconciliation, and a couple of things to highlight that you were able to eliminate the unfunded Lakefield secondary plan for almost $214,000 this year. So that was funded, and as well too, you reduced your unfinanced capital by $177,000, and you paid down your long-term debt for $193,000. All of those three items, although they involved utilizing cash and things such as that, they're not considered a PSAP expense, but for operations, they are required to bring you back to an operational point of zero, and the fact that any other surplus or deficits do get moved into your reserves or accumulated revenues, which brings everything to zero. The following page represents of your total accumulated surplus, what we saw on the previous page of $77 million. The two components are what you have invested in your capital assets, which is about $60 million, and then the orange bar is the total, so that's the difference of what you have in reserve and reserve funds. And as you can see, an indicator of good health is that the orange bar is always taller than the blue bar. So next is just a quick summary, 5 years on your revenues, expenses, and your annual surplus on a PSAB basis. As you can see there, the annual surplus remains fairly consistent over the years, and that's just a factor that you are increasing your capital asset base, as well as being able to retain some funds set aside for future use and reserves. The following page is a summary of your revenues for the year on I said on a PSAB budget, overall actual revenues were higher than budget, which is always good to see. A large portion of that, though, is related when you look at the province of Ontario funding. There was an additional $627,000 included in that for the modernization funding, the balance of which later on gets transferred into the reserve, and as well to your taxation, your supplementaries in that year were also higher than the write-off, so there was variance to budget on that line as well. And user charges is a number of items there that relate to water and sewer charges, recreation fees, landfills, permits, and building permits and things such as that. So it remains fairly strong during that year. And then, so as I said, you're $19.2 million in actual revenue, and the following page is just a graphical display of that. And normally, property taxation is your largest source of revenue. Next page highlights the financial activities on the expense side. So then these are your expenses without on a PSAB basis, so they do not include any capital additions, but they do include amortization. You are slightly over budget on this, and that's mainly attributable to the increase in the landfill liability and the increase in the employee future benefits, which make up most of the work there. And as well too, there were some projects initially budgeted as capital, but then when they were looked at on a tangible capital asset basis, they didn't meet the definition for that, and that's a lot of the work done at the lagoon. So majority of that was, or all of that was considered maintenance as opposed to capital. So that also then is reflective in the environmental services being over budget there. And then the pictorial display is there, the pie chart of your expenses as well too. And with this one, the township is a little more balanced in the sizes of the slices of the pie here compared to other municipalities. So you do have active expenses in a large part of your in all your areas. The segmented information. So then this just looks at your expenses in a different format on the next slide. So this then looks at the type of expenses, and as usual, salaries and benefits are your largest expense, since you do provide your services predominantly with the use of staff. So that's a slight increase year over year, but still within the budget limits. And as well too, the materials increase and contracted services increase is related to just the work related to the lagoon and the change in the landfill liability. But then, yeah, overall, your amortization too was also higher year over year than budget. So, and then the following page just presents the pie chart there. And now we come to the slide called accumulated surplus. And then this to me is kind of goes hand in hand with the slide we saw earlier, being accumulated surplus in equity and tangible capital assets. As you can see here, this your surplus areas amount to about $58 million of your $77 million in accumulated surplus. And the majority of that is all tied up in your tangible capital assets, being your roads and bridges, buildings, facilities. So as I said earlier, those are items that you have and hold and you don't normally turn into cash. And as well too, within there are some operating deficits within the community centers and arenas. Did increase slightly year over year. And as well too, your employee future benefits and your landfill closure and post-closure costs are not funded, so they do appear here. And as I said earlier, you do fund those as when you think you're going to incur them, and for your municipality, most of them are already included within the budget. And as well too, the unfunded Lakefield secondary plan, as you can see there, in 2019 it is zero, so that was funded during the year. And then what is left over then is your reserves and your reserve funds, and as well too, they did increase part of that is over 600,000 in the modernization funding that was received that wasn't utilized, so that is put into the reserves and then will get pulled out as you use it moving forward. And as well too, some other reserves within all the department areas did increase, and as well the environmental services are segregated for the water and sewer systems. Excuse me. And then the other represents recreation and planning reserves. So it's about 19.8, almost $19.9 million in reserves at the end of the year. And then the following page does show the 5-year trend on your reserves. And then the next slide is your capital additions during the year. And then you can see them broken down into various components, and of course within your total $3.1 million in capital additions. You can see the various components there. And then amortization in comparison to additions. You can see that other than 2018, you're fairly consistent within your additions. And then the average useful life of your assets. Keep in mind, assets are based on the historical cost and then presented net of amortization. Water and sewer systems for a lot of municipalities have gone through a lot of upgrades over the last number of years, so that's why there's a lot of green in that bar. And then the final slide just represents the fact your net financial assets, the trend. This is reflective of the fact you do have equity outside of your tangible capital assets and your reserves, and as well too, and not a whole lot of debt associated with that. So the increase there is consistent with your increase in your equity. So at the end of the year, you do stand in a good position. All I wish to say on the presentation.
Thank you very much, Richard. So I guess I'll ask Elaine if he wants to say a couple words, and then I'll ask council for any questions. Elaine, did you want to add anything?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, as council is aware, township staff have had a great working relationship with the team at Baker Tilly. I think it's important that we each respect the role that each of us plays and fulfills to ensure accurate financial record keeping and reporting. And I just wanted to thank Richard, Veronica as well, who is our audit senior involved on site, and their team, Baker Tilly, for really what I would consider another successful audit process for 2019. As Richard mentioned, the COVID definitely had an impact on us. Our implementation of financial statement, our financial system last year, but really a matter of focus just to complete the tangible capital asset work. And but just wanted to thank Richard and Veronica for kind of hanging with us and getting through that, and actually working through this last bit to get it before council tonight.
Thank you, Elaine. Colleagues, questions, inquiries, comments? Donna, and then Anita.
Yes, through you to Richard. Thank you so much, Richard, for the presentation. And I'm not sure if you changed your format or I'm just getting more familiar with things, but it seemed to be very easy to follow this year. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anita?
Actually, I don't know if it would even show up in your paperwork, but for instance, when the township receives, say, donations for a community project, I'm thinking of the bronze statues that the Lakeville Literary Group would like to have, or so we receive funds, we can provide income tax receipts. Does that show up anywhere in here, or is that sort of like a totally separate pocket?
No, if the funds are going to the township, they do get reported in your books and records, and then if they're not utilized, they do get set aside. And within the financial activities on the revenue side, there was a line there for donations, so they do get reflected within the financial statements.
Thank you, Anita. Sherry or Jerry? No? I have a couple comments to make. First of all, I want to echo Councillor Ballantyne. If you are using the step format, I've been in a couple other organizations where it's been used. Kudos to you and your team for developing it. It makes it a lot easier for those of us who are not accountants to follow through. So that's really great. Appreciate that. Second thing I'll note, and with great satisfaction, is your opinion of a clean audit. That's critically important for us, and it's really good to see. So we appreciate that. I did have a couple of questions. So I'm looking at slide 25. Anyways, it's where you're looking at the amortization over our roadways at 61%. That would seem to indicate that we're accumulating a bit of a deficit in terms of our road maintenance. Am I reading that correctly?
That could be the case, but you must keep in mind too that we're only 10 years into recording of tangible capital assets. So some of your older roads were done based on estimates of what it might have cost. So there are still some estimates within some of those totals, and as well too, and it is based on historical costs. So some of those older estimated roads could be in there at a lower value, and then if you do complete a new road, it'll come in a much higher value based on today's values, so that that would flip over, create more of a green bar there. But I think if I remember correctly, you do have a fairly regimented schedule for improving those.
We do, and we've got an asset management plan process to go through to help us with that. The second issue I wanted to raise, and it's the one that Lane raised. So I think the number, I don't have it right in front of me, is cash. We're sitting on $16 million worth of cash assets. Now, is that totally non-interest bearing? Are we earning anything off that 16 million?
I could answer that, Richard. We are receiving nominal interest on that, and even it's just through our current account, right? So not very much. In 2019, we did, the rate was not as bad. In 2020, it definitely tanked. So as noted in the report, even a marginal rate increase would be beneficial to us on that quantity of cash. And so we had the approval in late 2019 for the policy, the investment policy. It was definitely our intent in 2020 to turn some of those funds into longer term investments, or at least deal with a different investment, high interest savings account, something like that. That is a priority for us in 2021, because we recognize that even a small amount on that quantity of cash will be beneficial.
Yeah, help me if I'm doing my math right. So if we're sitting on 16 million, let's say we park 4 million to keep it totally liquid. Even if we took 12 million and got an extra point on that, that's $120,000 or 2 points on the levy, by just getting an extra 1% return on 2/3 of our cash on hand. Have I done that calculation correctly, or have I missed something?
At a high level, on a cash basis, that's accurate. With respect, though, to where the majority of those funds are, they're actually water and sewer rates. So over half of that $12 million would be water and sewer. So that would go back against the water and sewer revenue lines as opposed to the actual tax rate. But your math is accurate, and that is something that we need to work better and harder on in 2021 and get that policy into effect.
Right. And the last thing I'll make mention of, two parts. First of all, we have very healthy reserves, and that's a positive thing. And that's the result of a lot of hard work and decisions made by councils past and by staff who have kept the fiscal situation of the township in good order. One of the things, colleagues, and we're all aware of it, that allowed us to do is to make that investment last year of close to $700,000, I think it was, over 2 years, to assist on our recovery program. We were able to do that because we had those reserves. And last night, Sherry and I were there. We were at the Economic Development Committee, and there was a report, correspondence there that indicated only about 5% of municipalities in response to COVID did something like that. And part of the reason why that's the case is because they didn't have the capacity to do it. So I just, wanted to point that out, that really speaks to the stewardship that's been exercised over the years. So I just wanted to recognize that, and to you, to Lane, and to all of your folks, and to all of the staff, appreciation for that, and we will continue to use good stewardship over the tax dollars of our residents. So I don't know, Richard, if you wanted to say anything in conclusion.
Yeah, no, I echo those comments. It's the ability to react and have those resources available, allow you to do those things. So that's always a benefit of having them. And yes, I wish to thank council and your staff for getting everything completed and done in a good fashion. So we thank them for that.
Just holding on for just a second here as I'm trying to. I don't have it. Here we go. Yeah, 561,000 in the first year and 135 in the second. I just want to make sure I had those numbers right. Okay, we need a motion to receive. Sherry and Jerry, all those in favor? Carried. Okay, colleagues, what we're going to do, we'll go through the 2 public meetings and then we'll take a break before we do the balance of the agenda, if that's okay with everybody, because we're 7 minutes behind on starting those. So we'll do those and then we'll take a break. So our first one is, they're both zoning changes. So Jeanette, if you want to announce the first meeting, that would be great.
Thank you. So I'd like to announce the Township of Selwyn is holding a public meeting to consider applications to amend the zoning bylaw for the Township of Selwyn in accordance with Section 34 of the Planning Act. The prescribed notice of public meeting was provided by prepaid first-class mail to all residents within 120-meter radius of the properties that are subject to the applications, as well as a sign was posted on the properties. A notice was provided by email and fax to the prescribed ministries and agencies, and the notice was available on the Township's website. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at the public meeting or make a written submission to the Township of Selwyn before the bylaw is passed, that person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of the council of the township to the local planning appeal tribunal, nor can a person or public body be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the LPAT unless in the opinion of the LPAT there are reasonable grounds to do so. The first application that you're considering tonight is for property located at 734 Tara Road in the Ennismore Ward. The applicants are proposing to operate a home-based business on the subject land. This home-based business does fall outside the scope of what will be permitted, and it will include the hosting of small weddings. So the applicant has termed them as elopement weddings. I think the applicants have seen an opportunity at this time to host small weddings, which would be a maximum of 10 guests. And it is intended to be seasonal in nature. There will be some additional employees, which may include a photography, musicians, an officiant, caterer, etc. The proposal does also include the accommodating of up to 8 overnight guests, which would be very similar to a bed and breakfast. The proposal does not include any sort of construction or expansion of the existing structures on the property. And the bed and breakfast component of the proposal would be subject to our normal licensing process, and that would ensure that there's adequate services to accommodate the proposed use, for example, the septic system. The property can readily accommodate the additional parking or traffic that having up to 10 people on the property may incur. So I did complete a review of this application, and I do believe that it is consistent with the provincial policy statement, the growth plan. It does maintain the spirit and intent of the county official plan as well as the township zoning bylaw, and it does represent good planning. And I have recommended that the draft bylaw, which is bylaw number 2021-031, which is a bylaw to zone the category of the certain lands located in Part Lot 6, Concession 5 of the MSR Ward to Rural Residential Exception 583, and this would permit the additional uses on the subject land, which would mainly be this hosting of small weddings. We have received comments from the Conservation Authority who have no objections to the application, and I did speak with the health unit, and they don't have any concerns as long as through the bed and breakfast licensing program that the applicant ensure that there's adequate room up to the septic system to accept the additional sewage, and as well there will be a component that is applicable to another part of the health unit in relation to food preparation and water supply. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you very much. First off, Madam Deputy Clerk, I understand we have nobody on the line wishing to speak either in favor or against this application. Is that correct?
Mayor Mitchell, we just had a last minute registration. We do have a Vera Payne on the line.
Okay. Ms. Payne, did you want to speak?
No, I didn't. I just was going to listen in and make sure everything that I had did on my end as far as writing my letter was okay. So.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'll now turn it over to council, to Donna.
Yes, thank you. Through you. Hopefully Vera can hear this. I congratulate you and Steve on such kind of a unique use of your property. It's a very beautiful old house, a large home, obviously with all those bedrooms and a lovely yard. So I wish you luck on your endeavor, and it sounds very interesting.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I think we're looking forward to it in our early retirement. So thank you.
Thank you, Donna. Thank you, Vera. Anybody else? Not seeing any. I'll entertain a motion. Moved by Sherry, seconded by Donna. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. We'll move on to the second item. If you would go ahead, Jeanette.
Yes, thank you. So this is for a property that is on Stony Lake. So it's the municipal address is 96 Stony Lake, Big Island. So the request of the zoning bylaw amendment would change the zone category to Lakeshore Residential Exception 584, which would allow for the construction or reconstruction and expansion of an existing boathouse. So there is an existing boathouse on the property, and the property owner, and it's in rough shape, I guess, in disrepair. And so the property owner would like to remove that, and they would like to replace it, but also would like to construct an addition onto that boathouse. I felt that it was a large enough change in the size of the boathouse that it wasn't something that we could consider through a minor variance. So the applicant decided to submit a zoning bylaw amendment. Presently, the lands are zone Lakeshore Residential, so this would put an exception zone on the property to allow for the change in the size of the boathouse. So I have completed a review of the application, and I do believe that is consistent with the provincial policy statement and the growth plan, and it does maintain the spirit and intent of the county and township's official plan and the township zoning bylaw, and it does represent good planning. So I have recommended that bylaw number 2021-030, which would establish a site-specific lakeshore residential exception zone to permit the reconstruction expansion of the existing boathouse, and then also establish some site-specific zone regulations to be brought forward to the bylaw section of the agenda for council's consideration. If you have any questions, I would be happy to answer them. I do believe that the applicant's agent, Ashlyn Kennedy, is on the line.
Yes, thank you. Ashlyn, do you have anything that you would like to add?
Good evening, Mayor. At this point, no, Jeanette's given a pretty good overview, but I am here to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. I'll now go to council. I see Anita.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's just on page 1 under the summary of the application. So second paragraph where it talks about proposing to reconstruct and expand. The last sentence, it says proposed reconstructed boathouse will have a total area of 100 square feet, and then in brackets you put 1,001. Should that be 108 square meters and then bracketed with the 1,165 square feet, or am I just?
No, you're correct. It should be 108 square meters. Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks for catching that, Anita. Any other comments? I don't see any. Does somebody like to make a motion? Jerry, seconded by Anita. Any question? No. All in favor? That is carried. Okay, colleagues, that ends the 2 public meetings. So let me just check. It is 7:16. So at 7:21, we'll return. We'll take a 5-minute break. Thank you. Okay, colleagues, I think we'll just wait for Sherry and then we'll return. Okay, colleagues, I'll call the meeting back to order. We are now at question period. Madam Clerk, do we have any questions?
Yes, we do. We have 8.
Okay, well, let's go through them. Oh, yes,
Okay.
Sherry. Hold on just a second.
Did Lane get a chance to talk about his audited financial statements, or are we not doing that?
He did it. I included that in part of the same conversation with Richard. He spoke to the main point in there, which was about the cash excess.
Okay.
Do you have an additional question? Because I'm happy to return to it.
No, I'm good. I just thought we might have missed it, but thank you.
Okay. Okay. So you mentioned 8 questions, Madam Clerk. If you want to go ahead, I'll either answer them or direct them to a staff member.
Okay, very good. First question is from Arthur Torella. Can the mayor and council please have the chief building official explain in writing what legal requirement or construction detail is required to meet the Provincial Building Code Act and Ontario Building Code legislation in my May 24th, 2012 building permit application that is well over 3,200 days past the OBC legal timeframe?
My answer, I've been advised by the CBO that numerous written responses have been provided to you detailing what is required in order for you to obtain your building permit. The most recent written response was provided on February 2nd, 2021.
Thank you. Question 2 is from Larry Wood as the spokesperson for Save Pigeon Lake. We have previously put forth a suggestion of how we might progress on the development of the wild rice management plan. I would like to clarify the intent and ask if council will take this initiative forward. We are suggesting that council organize a gathering consisting of representatives from Selwyn, City of Kawartha Lakes, Municipality of Trent Lakes, Parks Canada, and Chief Weetung. The purpose of the gathering would be to show that our communities are willing to work together in developing a solution, highlighting the need to use this effort as a building block towards a much stronger bond within with our neighbors. Will Selwyn Council take on this initiative?
Well, thank you. As you'll note, earlier this evening, Council passed a resolution asking Parks Canada to arrange a meeting by June 30th with local municipal councillors. At this meeting, council members would act on behalf of residents by bringing forward their concerns and requests to Parks Canada directly. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next question is from Marianne Johnston from Lakefield. Is the municipality going to allow the operator of the trailer park at Hague Point to offer camping and trailer sites along the trail in the buffer zone that separates them from the Lakefield Marsh?
Okay. If I understand the question correctly, this is likely referencing an area that is used for overflow camping during peak periods. The current operating agreement permits this area to be used for overflow camping. The current agreement is in place for this season and next season. Having said that, the COVID regulations are limiting camping for seasonal use only at this time. Should COVID restrictions change, then this area can be used by the operator for overflow camping as per the agreement. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The next question is from Lynn Davis from Ennismore. Selwyn Township has close relations with Curve Lake First Nation and has signed a friendship accord with Curve Lake and Hiawatha First Nations. What role or actions can a local municipality take to assist Parks Canada and various community organizations with education, reconciliation, and positive outcomes?
Thank you. Selwyn has worked closely with local First Nations for many years and most recently through the Community Economic Development Initiative, known as SETI. A recent positive project is the launch of the Link, a rural transportation system that will service Curve Lake and Selwyn residents with connections to Peterborough Transit. Selwyn will continue to cooperate with the Curve Lake First Nation and Hiawatha on joint ventures that benefit our region. These types of collaborations demonstrate leadership to our communities. We recognize that not every issue has an easy solution. Selwyn will continue to engage in respectful and transparent dialogue on topics, even though they may be difficult. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from John Britton from Lakefield. Is the township going to allow the operators' growing expansion of the trailer park, or will it halt their work on new trailer pads, electrical, and water hookups? So this would be in reference to the Lakefield campground.
Great. Perhaps Mike, you could take this one.
Absolutely. Through you, Mr. Mayor, there are no plans to expand the trailer park, including adding trailer pads. Last year, work was done at some existing sites. Some carryover work from last year was completed this spring. There may be circumstances where existing electrical or water hookups may need to be repaired or replaced, but to be clear, there are no expansion plans.
Thank you, Mike.
Okay, thank you. The next question is from Janice Wirch from Lakefield. The Lakefield Campgrounds Utilization Studies focus is to assess the role of the township in providing campground services. Rather than asking the larger question, do you as a community resident want a trailer park / campground at Hague Point, or would you like the property to be converted back to passive parkland for use by all of the community residents? Given the current focus of the survey, how does council intend to use the information gleaned from this survey?
Well, thank you. First, let me point out that the survey does ask for feedback on whether the park should be converted back to parkland, and if so, what kind of amenities would be suggested. The survey represents, however, only one component of the feedback process that will be used by council to gain an understanding of the broader public perspective about the park. It will not be used by simply totaling up the numbers to make a decision based on a majority answer. Council will review all aspects of this issue as it reflects upon it and works to arriving at a decision. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have another question from John Britton of Lakefield. Will council allow for public viewing of the stakeholders' presentations, either live or by video recordings?
Mike, maybe you can answer this one.
Absolutely. Again, through you, Mr. Mayor. The stakeholder groups did not provide presentations. Monteith Brown has been meeting with the stakeholder groups to hear from them about their opinions for the campground property. These Monteith staff have been taking notes and will provide a summary of the feedback to council. This will be made available to the public upon completion.
Okay, thanks, Mike. And we have one more, I believe.
That's correct. This is our last question. Again, this was a third question from John Britton from Lakefield. From the agenda, it seems that the township will be allowing the operators' docks to be used by campers for the next 2 years. Does the township have a plan for containing the blue styrofoam that has been breaking off for years and likely ending up inside the wildlife in the marsh?
So Mike, maybe you can let us know, are we going to be dealing with this?
Absolutely. Again, thanks to Mr. Britton for the question, and through you, Mr. Mayor. Staff will review the conditions of the entire campground, especially the docks, to ensure they are in good repair.
Okay, thank you very much. And that concludes our question period. Thank you to everybody who submitted a question. We'll now move on to the municipal officers and staff reports for direction And our first report is from Rob, dealing with the Services Review Implementation, Recommendation 16, the site plan review. So Rob, go ahead.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, as you know, the report that I provided to Council this evening is in response to that recommendation number 16 in our Planning and Services Review. So in that review, the consultant recommended that staff report to Council setting out the growth and non-growth areas for site plan approval and codifying growth area standards, such as paid parking and other amenities. Council's response to that recommendation was to pass a resolution recommending that staff provide a report to Council that deals with site plan approval process and outlines servicing standards that may vary depending on location and other relevant context, ensuring that rural areas, the default requirement does not include paved parking. So in light of that guidance, I completed a review of our current site plan guidelines, and that includes a list of design objectives, development standards, and I also considered which standards could be relaxed in a rural context. In addition, I considered different approaches to making the distinction between rural and urban settings. So the report begins with an outline of what site plan control process, the site plan control process is intended to accomplish. So in the report, I outlined the 7 goals, broadly speaking. They provide a consistent standard to promote safe, functional, attractive developments. They provide safe off-street park. They're intended to provide safe off-street loading and parking. They're intended to provide safe pedestrian and automobile traffic access to and from the site. We also require road widenings where appropriate. We also want to ensure that the costs associated with the development are borne by the applicant, that the end result provides a barrier-free environment and protects the environment, environmentally sensitive areas. These goals, Mr. Chair, are achieved through the use of the authority granted under the Planning Act, and the Council has chosen to designate the entire township as a site plan control area, and so consequently, to any development as defined in the Act must comply with site plan requirements. The report reviews the approval process for both major and minor applications, and details the involvement of agencies who provide input into the design and peer review the reports provided in support of the applications. The report also outlines the design objectives and their intentions and purposes, and these are currently listed in our site plan submission guide. These objectives, the broad objectives, currently apply to all site plan applications we receive, and I would not recommend that we modify any of these to account for setting. They are broad and description of what the following more detailed specifications are intended to achieve. Where I found flexibility in the more detailed specifications. So some of the specifications can be modified to account for typical differences between the characteristics of development within rural and urban settings. So I've recommended that we make changes to several of the standards within the design objectives identified as parking, central storage and collection areas, and landscaping objectives. So these proposed changes would apply to rural areas, which I have recommended would fall outside of identified settlement area boundaries, or in our official plan are what are identified as hamlet and urban areas, specifically Bridge North, Ennismore, Youngs Point, and Lakeville. And we did provide detailed maps of the boundaries of each of those areas. So in addition to these recommendations, I've also recommended that our application document be modified to include a reference to the fact that although approval of minor site plan applications has been delegated to staff, applicants may request that approval of their minor application be made by council. So to end, Mr. Chair, I have recommended that council provide feedback on the proposed recommendations, following which staff will make necessary amendments to the site plan guideline document and the current site plan bylaw, and that a report be brought back to council for consideration to a future meeting to implement the final policies.
Thank you, Rob. Colleagues, comments? Anita?
I just want to, I like the idea of differentiating between the urban versus the rural in this document. So I really like that specific point that you've made.
Donna?
Yes, through you. I was wondering, did Rob expect these recommendations from council tonight, or can we have a longer time to digest everything? Because it is a pretty complex report and we've had a lot of complex things tonight. So basically I'm saying that I would like to have an extension to give some input. Time period.
Yeah, I guess I can say I don't have any expectations. I'm at council's disposal. So whatever you think is achievable, I'm certainly happy to hear what your input is and to make any relevant changes to the documents.
So how would we, sorry, how would we handle that then? Just send comments to you directly?
That may be one way to do it. I could summarize the input that I've received from each individual council member in an additional report to council, and then make recommendations based on my review of what council members have asked.
Mr. Chair, sorry, the other option would be to just simply defer it to either the next meeting or a future meeting to give council a little bit more time to review it and have a discussion at a later meeting. It looks like our chair and our alternate chair are frozen. We'll just sit tight here for a minute.
I'm just going to apologize now. I've got a dog here beside me that's a little scared of the thunder, so that's what I'm doing.
Oh, that's okay. Put him online.
Let's see him.
Too busy cowering.
I didn't even hear the thunder.
Always only sunshine over in Ennismore, you know that.
Yeah, that's probably it.
So a note just came in from Sherry that she lost power. So there must have been a bit of a power glitch in Lakefield.
Oh.
Yeah, look, it looks like there's a bit of a power issue in a few spots, including Tanya's.
So what do we do? Have to.
Well, we'll just sit tight here for a minute. It sounded like Sherry's power came back on, so.
I told her to buy a generator. Angie, when we get to the, can you hear me?
Yep.
When we get to the wild rice one, did you make some changes? I didn't have a chance to check my email before I started in on meetings. So have you put, is it a different one other than the one that's in our agenda here? You've added a few things?
Sorry, the wild rice motion that Andy moved? No, the only thing I think that was added was the time frame to ask Parks Canada to convene a meeting. I think June 30th was added to it.
I meant cannabis.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I said rice. It's the Rob's report on the cannabis. And we talked earlier today, there was some input and you were going to make some changes. Did you add a few things to that?
I did. I sent an email. So do you want me to send it to you again?
Sure. If you send it on my BlackBerry, then maybe I can read it from there.
Okay.
Thanks.
While you're there, Angie, I believe this recommendation that we're talking about here right now, it does say to bring back to a future meeting to implement the final policies.
Oh, yes, related to the site plan. I think the only thing Rob would appreciate if you like just a discussion about what do you agree with, are there things that, yeah. So if you're not, if you don't want to do that tonight, that's fine. That can be done later on. He just needs some direction.
Thank you.
So it sounds like, oh, Sherry, you're back. Good.
What happened?
Oh, I think when the power went out, a few people lost power on the line.
Should pay our hydro bills.
I sent that email, Donna.
Yep, I'm reading it right now. Thank you.
Okay.
So
Anita's trying to log back in as well.
All right, everybody, I lost my hydro. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
What about Andy? Is he still here or he has to reboot his system? I had to reboot my system.
he looks frozen.
Okay, Andy?
I hear you.
Yeah, but your face is kind of frozen. There it moves a little bit, but. Terry, did you lose hydro too?
Yep.
Terry or Donna, did you lose hydro or are you okay?
The promised land.
Oh yeah, that's right. The Holy Land.
We've been sitting here playing crib waiting for you.
Okay, are we all back?
Yeah. Is Angie back?
Yeah, I think we're all back. I think, I'm not sure. I think Tanya lost power, so Michelle took over as host.
Okay.
And I think Andy is still frozen. I wonder, Andy, if you turned your video off.
Okay, can you hear me?
We can hear you. Yep.
Okay, well,
Council, I'm back on. It's Tanya.
Thanks,
It looks
Tanya.
like, hi, Angie. It looks like we've continued on live stream, so that's good. And it's still recording from what I can tell. So when Angie gets back, we're good to go.
well, I can see you folks. Can you see me?
Oh,
Okay. I don't know what's going on. I come in and then it just kicks me back out again. So let's just see what we can do. So the last I recall, Donna was asking Rob if we could send him proposals, then he would consolidate those and come back for approval of what he's presented, plus incorporating anything that council may have brought forward. I think that's where we were at. And Rob, I think you were about to say or had said that that would work, right?
Yeah, that was my suggestion. And Angie actually made another suggestion, which was that, you know, we could just table this and then come back at a future meeting and have a more fulsome discussion about what different council members thought about the proposal.
it's Donna here. I'd like to move that we defer it or table it and bring it back to the next council meeting for discussion.
Okay, I see that motion seconded by Anita. Just before we vote on it though, I had a question that I wanted to ask Rob. So Rob, in that section where you're listing the things that you would change, under the parking, rural development section, you made a note that said that you would look at alternatives if they can be shown to achieve the township's objectives. And so I just trying to figure out what that means in terms of what are we measuring against? What are the township's objectives in respect of parking in rural development areas that would shape the decision?
Yeah, so we have the broad objective, right? That's spoken to in the agreement, or sorry, in the guidelines. We would obviously have regard for those, but the thought here is that we still have a need. I think council would agree that we still have a need to accommodate people with, say, mobility impairments, right? So the thought would be, like, can we lessen the requirement or consider not imposing a requirement for asphalt throughout or over the number of parking spaces that are required to be provided, and maybe concentrate on spaces, say, that would be required to meet the minimum standards for, say, accessible parking, right? So those are the types of things that we would still have in our mind, right, about what we think is good rural development, but having regard for the fact that maybe in certain instances, you know, the entire parking area would not need to be surfaced, right?
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor, duly seconded, to defer this report to a future meeting. And in the interim, colleagues are to bring any additional suggestions forward to Rob. All those in favor? That's carried. Okay. We will then move to item B, which is our proposed input to the federal medical cannabis licensing regime. The federal government's doing review. Rob, you've prepared a report with some suggested input. Can you please go ahead and present that?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Really, Ange had a big hand to play in this. She'd been consolidating some of the comments we'd received from other agencies as well, and put a lot of work into summarizing what would be a good response to the federal government. In addition to that, we've kind of give council a bit of a heads up on, you know, the meeting that's coming on the 13th, the special meeting that Meridian will present their findings to date as it relates to the work that we've asked them to do to review best practices as it relates to our official plan and zoning policies. So there are a number of suggestions that we're recommendations that we're asking council to consider as our input to the federal government. And Angie has added a couple more, I think, that she had forwarded to council earlier today, related to zoning, as I recall, asking that the federal government consider the implications, the licensing implications, to ensure that the aspects related to municipal zoning are considered. And the other one, sorry, I don't have them in front of me, but
yeah, one was require the licensee to comply with the township zoning bylaw related to cannabis cultivation and processing, including relevant setback requirements, by ensuring that local municipal authorities are part of the approval process for medical cannabis. And the second one was that Health Canada suspend the issuance of any new medical cannabis license until such time as this review is complete and in place, and further that any existing medical cannabis licenses already issued be required to comply with the final amendments that Health Canada approves. I think those were the two additional ones that Angie circulated earlier today. And I think Sherry has a comment.
Thank you. Through you. On the 6th point, I'd like to amend where it says requiring a licensee to safely handle, I'd like to add and store any chemical products such as pesticides. I think that's important. And the last point, it says is the inspection mechanism, is that meant for the municipality or Health Canada? I'm not sure the way that's written, what you mean, Rob.
yeah, it's intended to be that Health Canada take that role on.
Okay, so at the Roma session, a rep from Health Canada admitted that there haven't been any inspections for over a year.
And hence part of the problem.
Yes. Right? So so I don't know. By asking for them to do it, I'm not sure if they will. And the first addition that Angie put in there about the zoning compliance of local zoning bylaws, can we add prior to issuance of a license? Health Canada shouldn't be giving them a license until they know that they're complying with the zoning bylaws of the municipality.
It wouldn't hurt to ask. Yep.
Okay. I don't know what the rest of my colleagues feel, but I think they're important things to add.
Okay, so there are two. One is to put handle and store, and the other with this is to do it prior to issuing of the license. Ensure compliance with the zoning bylaws prior to issuing the license. So those are two amendments that Sherry is considering. Is everybody comfortable with those changes? We'll just deal with that first. Okay, Donna.
I was just going to say that those are great suggestions. And I wonder on the last point, well, Health Canada to implementing an inspection mechanism, do you think we could add a part to that saying that inspection has been non-existent or not satisfactory, I guess in the last year, like just kind of give them a little bit of a nudge that, and make it, some people might not even be aware of that inspections haven't been taking place. It's probably a very complex organization, and the person that's in charge of implementing inspections, maybe the other people don't even know what the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing. So just in brackets, maybe put there have been no inspections during the 2020.
I think that would easily go in after that bullet point in a bracket. just as Donna suggests, we note that there have been no inspections done over the last year.
That's good. That would be satisfactory with me.
Is everybody comfortable with that as well? Okay, I'm seeing nods. And Rob, that's not a problem to add that?
No, I don't see a problem with that.
Okay, colleagues. So what we're ending up with the two suggestions by Sherry and the suggestion by Donna is we have the 8 bullet points in the original submission, plus the 2 bullet points that have been added, that was circulated, that I read out and that we got earlier today. So is it your desire, or does somebody want to move a motion that we provide that input with those 10 points? Donna, I think you're moving that, and Sherry will second it. Any further discussion? Not seeing any. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, colleagues, that's that one. And we will go back to Lane for item C, which is the Lakefield sewer, water and sewer budget.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a few brief comments to support the report and the attachments related to the water and sewer budget 2021. I guess one of the key points, there's no rate increase proposed for 2021. For much the same reason as we brought forward the report for Woodland Acres last meeting. We're completing our asset management plan. Our reserves are in a good spot. And then once we get that asset management plan in place, we'll be able to take a look long term and set a rate structure based on that. We do have a financial plan in place for the water utility that proposes a modest 1% increase annually, but I think we'll be able to get by this year without that. There are a large number of significant capital investments in water and sewer. Sewer, a little over 930,000, water over 630. So a bit more than $1.5 million there. Of note, the tie-in of the Lakefield South development area and the corridor along Smith Street and Fraser Street there is a significant development for water and sewer, and also for the township. This will allow for significant development and significant private investment actually in our community for years to come. Just in closing, I just wanted to recognize Adam Tobin's work on this and support building the budget this year. A lot of work involved in that, and then the capital worksheets which are attached. And of course, that's early days. When we get to budget presentation, the effort that he's going to have to put in to coordinate some of that and have a successful 2021 construction season as well. So just wanted to thank Adam for that work as well. And Council, had any questions, I'll do my best to answer them.
Hey, colleagues, questions? I'll entertain a motion if there's no questions. That's Anita to approve, Jerry to second. Okay, all those in favor? That is carried. Okay, that is that's those reports. So we'll now go to consent items. Does anybody want a consent item pulled? Sherry? And
Number 12.
So 12 under correspondence. Okay, Donna? You're muted, Donna.
5B.
5B.
Under consent.
Okay, so 5B for Donna, 612 for Sherry. Anything else, anybody? Okay, not seeing any. We'll go to 5B for Donna.
Yeah, I guess can you hear me?
You're good.
Oh, I'm okay now?
Now you're good.
Okay. This is regarding Megan's report, Communications and Marketing Coordinator. I was just wondering, she was mentioning the ability for public to use the docking station at the township office, and I was just wondering how often that is used.
Is Megan on the line? Yep, there she is.
Hi, yes, through you. Donna, I'm actually not sure how often the docking station is being used, but I can actually check in with Anna and get back to you on that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and Sherry, item 12, which is the town of Plimpton, Wyoming, the suicide and crisis prevention hotline. You mute it, Sherry.
I'd like to support that. Move to support it. You muted.
Sorry, we'll pull that one out. Moved by Sherry, seconded by Anita. So let's dispose of that first. All those in favor? Carried. Okay. And that's all of the pulled items. So we need a motion to receive all of the items on consent. Moved by Anita, seconded by Donna. All those in favor? Great. That's carried. So that takes us through to no petitions. So we will do the council portfolio updates, and we'll start with Councillor Ballantyne.
Thank you very much. The first that I have listed here is, I'm sure everybody knows that the link is ready to go next week. And there was a map put in Peterborough this week, last week, and there's a more detailed map on the website if anybody's asking. And Public Works are putting up the bus stop signs this week. I'm not sure if they're finished yet. It's so early, it's only Tuesday. So they'll be finished by the end of the week. And we had our library board meeting this afternoon, and we had a presentation from Ann Taylor from Curve Lake to help board members understand the call for action piece and the truth and reconciliation. It was a very good presentation, and board members felt very positive and felt that they understood I guess you would say the position of the First Nations people. And we will discuss at a further meeting how we'll move forward. And we decided to make a donation to the Curve Lake Library in thanks to Anne for doing her presentation. The fundraising committee has put a donate button on the website, and currently they've received, I think I have the correct figure, $1,000 donated towards the library. And it was explained that we have limited ability to raise funds, no book sales, no clothing sales, and so on. So that was a good start, and we're going to have another meeting next week to see more long-term ideas. And the staff and some board members got training last week from the St. John's ambulance about, and I hope I have this right, naloxone. It's I didn't attend, but I think it's the kit's available, and Sherry would know better, but I think that's the drug administered for overdoses. So we are going to have some kits in our libraries. The Police Services Board met yesterday, and Janice attended because she'll be making the written submission to the province on behalf of all municipalities in Peterborough County. She gave an outline of ideas proposed for the new provincial mandated board. It's looking like it will be one board, which is the province's wishes. Numbers to be determined, but municipalities express the desire that each of the 7 have one representation on the board, and a First Nations representation is unclear at this time. Initially, there would be included with the detachment area, but another arrangement may be made. So we're just waiting to hear that. And the board will also have 20% community members, 20% provincial appointees. So it will be a fairly large board, and there were some concerns of the size, making it difficult to manage and move things forward. So we'll just have to see how that plays out. That's it.
Thank you, Donna. Sherry, Economic Development.
Thank you. Craftworks at the barn are planning on improvements to their entrance to make them more accessible, but work has to wait until COVID restrictions are lifted. R&J Machine are doing CIP upgrades to their facade, new siding, windows, UV, and ionization fans. The Fourth Chamber of Commerce is looking for nominations for our local businesses for the Business Excellence Awards, and I believe the deadline's May the 10th. Don't hold me to that date. It's around the first week in May. And a Lakefield couple are the new owners of Horling's Garden and Design Center on Lakefield Road. So we're certainly going to have our share of garden centers. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry. Jerry, Public Works and Recreation.
Yeah, sorry about that. A little bit of thunder here, lightning now, and scared dog. Road sweeping continues. Guys are doing a bang up job as always. Park and Rec, they're getting the lawnmowers ready because it is coming after this stuff in the warm weather here. So they're just getting stuff ready for the spring. Other than that, everything's good as gold. Oh, and we had a great engagement at the joint trail and Park and Rec meeting the other day. There was a really good conversation. It was only supposed to last an hour. It went an hour and a half. Anand did a fantastic job, and there was a lot of good feedback there and great discussion. So everybody's taking an interest in it.
Thank you, Jerry. Anita, on sustainability, culture, and seniors.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So our Accessibility Advisory Committee meeting is canceled for tomorrow. We have nothing to put on the agenda. We have a Municipal Heritage Committee meeting on Thursday night. We'll be discussing the draft presentation, which the committee chair and vice chair will be making a presentation to council in May. We were talking about fundraising, or Donna was talking about fundraising challenges. There's, I think, a lot of our nonprofits and our service organizations are having a tough time. So there's a couple of good fundraisers. The Lakefield Village Lions Club are selling trees. Yeah, they're selling trees, and then the Lakefield District Lions Club is selling tickets on a 50-50 raffle. Both that information can be found on their Facebook pages. I don't know if you had a chance to, when we were reviewing our council package for the Kawartha Chamber News Blast or Flash or whatever it's called. One of the things that they highlight in there is the Trent Severan Trail Towns. So I looked it through, and they feature 9 communities, including Lakefield and Buckhorn locally, and it's a really nice job. I don't know if it's a chamber or if it's called tswtrailtowns.ca, and it's a RTO8 program. So that's a really good website to check out. And out of just for a bit of laughs, sign wars have started in Lakefield with Kingdon Lumber and Fourth Lakes Construction. I saw some stuff on their Facebook page. It's going big in Peterborough, so it's good that our local community is also getting involved in it.
Thank you very much, Anita. I'll just do my report and hopefully beat the, Jerry.
If I could, please. Mike just texted me, Mike Richardson, and saying that our survey that we've got out there regarding the campground, huge engagement. We're up to about 1,400 responses right now. So there is great engagement from the community, and Mike thought that important to that I mentioned that and I missed it. So my apologies to Mike.
Good. Thanks for mentioning that, Jerry. Okay, on my report, first of all, I'll just deal with the public health side. So as everybody knows, the restrictions that we had the last time we met were increased a couple days after that and then modified a little bit. So Many of our outdoor recreational facilities are presently closed, and the stay-at-home order was extended for a couple of weeks, so it will be a total of 6 weeks. April, particularly first half of April, we've experienced a significant outbreak in that third wave. April will be the record month. We'll have experienced more cases in April than we have in any month during the pandemic. In fact, we're already there, and we still have a number of days to go with April. The good news, though, is in the last few days, I haven't had a chance to look at today's, but in the last few days, we've seen a modification. We're still seeing cases, but not at the same rate that we were a week ago. So that's some positive news. In terms of vaccine, we still have a number of clinics that are running. Over the next couple of weeks, will require a little bit of patience as supplies ramp up to the province. They're going to be directing a significant amount of that to the hotspots. The scientific table is saying that it's really essential that we get vaccinations or vaccines into those hotspots, particularly in Toronto and Peel. And so that'll be happening over the next couple of weeks. Had the opportunity, the Premier hosted a teleconference with all the heads of councils to talk about the measures that have been put in place. The Minister of Health, the Minister of Municipal Affairs, and the Attorney General were all present, and they all answered questions. Also had an opportunity to meet with the MPP and the MP, also on primarily on these issues. I just wanted to say something that's really important. We really need to be doing both vaccines and public health measures. They're both important. We're not going to vaccinate our way out of a third wave. The public health measures continue to be important in respect of masking and distancing and not assembling, etc. And so, but every day, more and more people are being vaccinated, and progress is being made. I just in terms of the budget for both the province and the federal government came out since the last time we met. The province has established or expanded their business support program, where you can get a grant between $10,000 and $20,000, and they specifically did a tourism and hospitality segment of that. The federal government has extended those programs that many small businesses continue to access, both the wage subsidy as well as the rent subsidy, are now going to continue through until September. They've also established a $200 million fund to support community festivals, events, sporting events, etc. So that's something that we may want to look at once the details of that come out. They've also established through the Regional Development Agency, so I'm assuming FedDev will be part of that, a $500 million tourism relief fund. So again, we still need to see the details in both governments, both the province and the federal government, increase their investment into broadband infrastructure. In terms of the county, we had a good discussion about signs once again. The sign bylaw, there's still two components of it to come. One is the election signs, and the other is that 400 meters back of a road allowance, of a county road allowance. So those are subject to two future bylaws. We had a discussion about the natural heritage system mapping, and I know that, and we're going to talk about it in a minute, that we're going to have county officials here to talk about the official plan. That's one component of it. So I suspect we'll have an opportunity for people to ask questions on that. And then just a couple of other things. I had an opportunity, there was an OMAFRA economic development meeting that I attended today, which was really interesting. One of the points they made is in Ontario today, and this number is up since I was last involved, 11% of all jobs in Ontario are agriculture or agri-food. And so that's pretty significant. I also attended the Peterborough Green Up, their launch of the Green Economy Peterborough, which is really an initiative to work with businesses to both adopt sustainable practices and to do it in a way that increases their bottom line. So that's an initiative that was launched. I wanted to mention, and if Janice is on the line, She may want to help me with this one. So as you know, Peterborough Utilities was sold to Hydro. And so, and that's took place some time ago, but over the timing, and Janice may have the exact timing, over the next little while, the residents in Lakefield who were being serviced by Peterborough Utilities will see a switch in their billing. And when they do that, there's a change in this billing cycle. So I think it's actually for that first month of a switchover will be actually a little bit longer. And I believe, Janice, that's happening sometime in June. Am I remembering the date correctly?
Yes, I believe you are remembering the date correctly, and there will be information starting to flow out from Hydro One to the customers in the very near future.
Right. So just to keep an eye on that. Now that's only for in Lakefield that we used to be serviced by Peterborough Utilities, so not the rest of it. So that's my report. So under new business, I think we need to. Okay, we'll go Sherry first because I have a piece as well. Go ahead.
It's not really a new business. It's a question to you with regards to your report. There's a unsolicited thing that has been sent out to us from COVID-19 Vax News. And it is putting scary information with regards to the vaccinations, talking about the number of deaths that are happening from it, saying that they're calling an experimental gene altering injection. I don't know who's sending this stuff out, but I hope somebody can quash it because it goes against what everybody's trying to accomplish to get everybody vaccinated. So I don't know if you're aware of it, Andy, but you would have received a copy, and can somebody please look into it?
I will refer that to Rosanna for sure.
Please. And then, did you want to mention Selwyn Road? Because I think the rest of council would be interested in that, and I'm trying to find the email I got on that.
Okay, so Sherry has led and on this that you know, we're not happy with the condition that has been left after the work that was done, and so they've committed to do some work. Some additional work, as well as to do some work with the contractor on what they call a warranty review, and that should be happening over the next while. If there's portions of the road that are difficult, let me put it that way, that have not been in great shape. There are lines that need to be painted, and Sherry, I haven't seen the email. Maybe you want to speak to it. Sherry's looking for it. So I'll let her look for that. Well, I think Angie wants, oh, Donna, go ahead.
I was just wondering, have we missed 8A committee reports? Because there's a recommendation from the Trail Advisory Committee there.
That's part of our consent agenda. So when we approve the consent agenda, we approve that.
I missed it then.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Well, Sherry's looking for that. Oh, she's got it. Go ahead.
So they had an on-site field meeting on Monday to review the deficiencies, and they've got them documented, including loss of aggregate, poor center line and takeoff joints and pavement markings, and deference to provide a proposed method of repair for review by county staff. And they it's going to be under warranty work, and they're going to provide a schedule for the warranty work. We want it to occur prior to the core work of the 2021 tender commencing. And then county staff will provide the inspection after the fact. Surface treatment warranty work cannot proceed prior to May the 15th. And the road will be repainted in yellow center line and white edge line. So just so you know, there's quite a bit of work going to be done on that road.
Thank you, Jerry. Jerry.
Thank you. Through you to, I guess, both of you, Mayor and Deputy. When it was completed, it was junk. What have they done to the guy who signed off on that at this point? I mean, now you're going to get some on warranty. You're not going to get it all on warranty. Now that the headache to the users of the road, the whole 9 yards. How could somebody in their right mind sign off on that? Is my question.
And that's a question that has been put forward, and when we get an answer, we'll convey it. Okay, so nothing else. I think, Angie, you want to try to schedule a special meeting. Am I right about that?
Yes, that's correct. I circulated a date to council. So we're hoping to schedule a meeting so that council can have some discussion about the official plan process. So there would be county planning staff available to discuss that with council. It was suggested we might try to add it to the special meeting on May the 13th and maybe start it at 5 p.m. So just looking for feedback, whether council wants to do it on that date and if that date and time works. If not, we'll have to find another date.
So at 3:30 to 5, we would have the report from our consultant on cannabis, and then we would have county staff that would come in at 5. That's what we're looking to do, right? So
yeah, that's correct.
Is everybody comfortable with that? Does everybody make that work? Anita says yes. I see nods from everybody. So okay, can we have a motion to create the special meeting there? Anita's moving that. Somebody want to second it? Donna will second it. All those in favor? Okay, so we've got that done. Any other new or unfinished business? No, I don't see any. Okay, we have, let's see here. We got 4 bylaws. We have the 2 zoning bylaws that we dealt with earlier, 96 Big Island and the 734 Terra Road. Then we have the authorizing bylaw for the Trillium Foundation funding. And then we have the establishing the taxation rates for 2021. Have a motion for those? For Anita, Jerry, all those in favor? Carried. And then we need a confirming bylaw from Sherry and seconded by Donna. All those in favor? Carried. And adjournment. Jerry, whoops, hold on. Just before we adjourn, Donna.
We still haven't done 8A, the Trail Advisory Committee recommendation.
No, but Donna, it's the reports are part of the consent agenda. When we approve the consent agenda,
okay,
we approve that.
Okay, so we don't have to talk about it.
No, okay. You can always pull it. Pull it.
Oh, it's fine with me. I think it's a good idea. I assume we'll hear the cost of taking down the barn and preparing the site. Mike, is Mike still there?
Mike, can you just speak to that? Because
yes, we have a preliminary budget. Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor. We have a preliminary budget that we're working through. I met with the Parks and Public Works staff so they can put together a price. It's not a very pricey item. They're going after the Ennismore Garden Club, and this subcommittee is going after a federal grant, and which would cover most of it. We would do some in-kind possibly. And then I'm meeting with 3 different new company, well, not new companies, meeting with barn demolition companies next week to get 3 quotes to see how much they will pay us for the materials, because the scope of work would change a little bit in that we wouldn't have to demolish the walls if the secret garden goes in. So it's not a huge ticket item, but we want to make sure that we account for everything and have the work to remove the recyclable parts of the barn scheduled before we move forward and bring a report to council.
Donna?
Through you to Mike, what exactly is a secret garden?
Because it would have walls. So if you take the barn board walls off and the roof off and the beams off, you're left with a stone wall that on the north side, it's not much above the level of the ground. But on the south side would be, 3-4 feet above the ground. They would want to put a garden inside there. So you can have vines all over the stone wall. You can have walkways in there. And it's slightly protected from the major elements, and is just kind of a neat, because it attaches to the waterfront trail, you could make it part of that and walk through and enjoy the hidden garden, because it would have the 3 to 4 foot walls to protect it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Okay, we have a motion to adjourn, moved and seconded. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, colleagues, have a great evening. Thanks to staff. Got a lot of work through today, so appreciate it all. Thank you. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye. Stay safe.